Chapter 321. Master. At the head of Jinnan Guanqing, a middle-level Jindan cultivator was wearing a black spirit armor. Seeing Qin Daoxuan's arrogant and domineering attitude, he couldn't bear it any longer and bowed to the real Yinjiu. This son is so arrogant, let his subordinates take its head. Hearing this, Yinjiuzhen squinted his eyes. He carefully sensed that the monk who called the formation outside the city gate was indeed the early stage of Jindan. Seeing this, Master Yinjiu was slightly relieved, turned his head to look at the subordinate who asked for the battle and said, "This person's cultivation base is not high, but it does not mean that his strength is weak. You should be careful, don't overturn the boat in the gutter, this commander here for you." "Yes, commander." Hearing this, the middle stage Jindan cultivator looked ecstatic. Like Master Yinjiu, he was from the Qingwei Dao school. When Master Yinjiu had not taken Jinnan Pass, his cultivation was still higher than that of the other party. But just because the real Yinjiu had a bad luck and captured Jinnan Pass, since then the cultivation base has been rising all the way. It only took a few decades to cultivate from a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan to the peak of Jindan. Infancy is only one step away. That is the true monarch of nascent soul with a lifespan of 3,000 years. Every time he thought that Yinji Jinren was going to break through to the nascent soul stage, all kinds of unspeakable emotions flooded into his heart. After all, this real Yin vulture was not as good as him back then. Feng Shui turns nothing more than this. Right now, Qinyuan Jianzong's attack on Zhenangwen is a good opportunity for him to make achievements. Of course, this middle-stage Jindan cultivator is not a reckless person. After yesterday's observation, he found that although the number of Jindan cultivators in the enemy's camp was large, reaching 8, among the 8 Jindan cultivators, the one with the highest cultivation level was only the middle-stage Jindan cultivator, and there was only one. This means that the strength of the enemy's group of Jindan cultivators is very weak, which is just enough to allow him to show his strength. If he knew that he was facing a top real person who could be listed on the Wanxinghai Jindan real person list, he would not dare to go out of the city to fight. Zhenangwen city head. In a flash of light, the middle-stage Jindan cultivator appeared in front of Qin Daoxian with all his spiritual armor. Seeing this Jindan cultivator in front of him actually wearing a white Taoist robe, with a dashing style, this middle-stage Jindan cultivator couldn't help but sneer in his heart. This son is so underestimated by the enemy, maybe he really has a chance to kill the enemy today, he thought to himself. Qin Daoxian frowned when he saw that he was called out for a long time, but only one middle-level Jindan cultivator came out. The real Yin vulture he expected to meet in person, and he took the opportunity to kill the opponent did not appear. If they can remove the real Yin Jiu by surprise, coupled with the war immortal boat they carry and his full strength, it may not be able to break the defense of the sixth-order formation of Zhenangwen. After all, no matter how strong the formation is, it still needs someone to preside over the operation. Losing Yinji Jinren, a cultivator at the peak of Jindan, the power of the Zhenangwen sixth-order formation will inevitably drop, and they will have the opportunity to break the formation. But right now, it's really a shrinking turtle. Qin Daoxian cursed secretly. He was sure that the enemy army did not know his record in Wanxinghai, otherwise he would never have sent a mid-level Jindan cultivator to confront him. This is not meeting the enemy, this is courting death. In other words, in the eyes of the real Yinjiu, Qin Daoxian is not worth his shot. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian knew what to do, etc. Seeing that Qin Daoxian didn't even say a word at the scene, he was about to do it when he came up, and the middle-stage Jindan cultivator on the opposite side gave up. He fought this time for the sake of fame and credit. Qin Daoxuan's refusal to report his name before the battle formation was very different from his thoughts. From the Qingwei Daoist school. Clang? Before he could finish speaking, a sword light erupted on his black spirit armor, blasting his figure dozens of miles away, directly hitting the defense formation of Zhenangwen. Boom! After a while, the roaring sound entered Qin Daoxuan's ears. In front, the middle-stage Jindan cultivator wearing black spirit armor felt pain everywhere. He looked at Qin Daoxian in horror, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes, and he said in a trembling voice, "Hai Dao realm." At this moment, Qin Daoxuan's whole body is shrouded in an invisible domain, which is the Siyu sword domain at the high level of the Dao domain realm. The sword just now was just a normal outbreak of the Siyu sword region, and Qin Daoxian did not use any special sword techniques to increase the power of the Siyu sword region. It is also thanks to Qin Daoxuan's cultivation that is slightly lower than the opponent's, plus the opponent has a fourth-order spirit armor body protection. Otherwise, the unexpected sword just now may directly kill the opponent. The middle-stage Jindan cultivator lowered his head, looked at the fourth order low-grade spirit armor with a faint crack in his eyes, and felt a little blood in his heart. This fourth order low-grade spirit armor was the most valuable treasure in his body. Now it was almost destroyed by Qin Daoxuan's sword. Qin Daoxian slashed the opponent with one sword, held a sword flower in his hand, and nodded secretly. The defense of the fourth order low-grade spirit armor is worn on the body of the Jindan cultivator. If you want to rely on the Siyu sword domain to break it, you need to cut a few more swords. If the opponent is wearing a fourth order high-grade spirit armor, the Siyu sword region might not be able to break his defense. At this moment, Qin Daoxian knew why some cultivators began to study the secrets of soul attack after reaching the golden core stage. Because of the spirit armor, the defense is too perverted. In addition, after the cultivator reached the golden core stage, he began to focus on the cultivation of the body. The powerful body and the fourth order spirit armor made almost every golden core cultivator become an iron lump, which was extremely difficult to kill. Qin Daoxian himself is the same. The fourth order high-grade power spirit armor is almost comparable to the ordinary fifth order low-grade spirit armor in terms of defense. Although his body training is not high, but with this spirit armor bodyguard, Qin Daoxuan's defense is definitely among the top few cultivators in the Jindan period. If he can integrate the indestructible true meaning into his flesh in the future, and add the fourth order high-grade power spirit armor to protect his body, he will stand there and let the ordinary Yuanying Jinjuan cultivator attack. It is estimated that the other party will have nothing to do with Qin Daoxian. Jinan Army Barracks. Countless Zhangzhou cultivators and Qinyuan Jianzong disciples burst into violent cheers when they saw Qin Daoxian slash the enemy general dozens of miles away with one sword. Qin Jinren is mighty. General Qin is amazing. Invincible real person. Invincible real person. In the military camp, I don't know who took the lead in shouting such a sentence, and the other monks followed and shouted. It didn't take a moment for the invincible real person's name to resound through the sky. Zhenangguan city head. The Shenqing Dao League troops stationed here saw that their own Jindan real person could not even stop the enemy general, and their morale was low, and they were even more afraid. As low-level monks, they could not tell how high Qin Daoxuan's cultivation was. They only knew that Qin Daoxian, like their leader, was a real Jindan, and in the eyes of the many low-level monks stationed in Zhenangguan, Jindan was the top powerhouse in Zhenangguan. The low-level monks in Zhenangguan did not know the existence of true monarch Minghuang. Although true monarch Minghuang has been in town for decades, he has been cultivating in the depths of the Asgard Palace. On weekdays, in addition to the Jindan cultivator, the people below do not know that Zhenangguan still has a Yuanying Jinjuan. In this way, Qin Daoxuan's behavior of defeating their main general at will undoubtedly made the low-level monks of the Shenqing Dao League stationed in Zhenangguan feel terrified. After all, if the enemy's high-level monks are unstoppable, they will cause a one-sided massacre to their own low-level monks. At that time, who can guarantee that he is not the one who was slaughtered? What a waste. Seeing that the subordinates who took the initiative to ask for battle were defeated by Qin Daoxian with a sword, Yin Jiasheng's face was gloomy. Especially when he heard the roars of the enemy army one after another, Yin Jizhen was even more disdainful in his heart. Humph! In the high section of the Dao domain, you dare to say that you are an invincible real person. Having said that, he also had to admit that Qin Daoxian was indeed a genius Jindan cultivator who was rarely seen in 1,000 years. Only with the initial cultivation of Jindan, one can reach the Dao realm of the High Taoist realm. Other sects are not sure about the real people, but among his Qingwei Taoist sect, Jindan cultivators who can do this are extremely rare. If you can reach the high level of Dao domain realm in the early stage of Jindan, when you will reach the later stage of Jindan, won't you be able to reach the lower realm? Thinking of this, immortal Yinjia's killing intent towards Qin Daoxian skyrocketed. He is another top immortal from the future of Wan Xinghai. This son must not be kept. Return. His voice sounded in the sea of knowledge of the defeated middle stage Jindan cultivator. Yes, Commander. The middle stage Jindan cultivator drove away in despair and returned to the sixth order defense formation in Zhenangguan. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian did not stop him. Because he knew in his heart that with the strength he just showed, Immortal Yinjia would definitely not give up. After all, Immortal Yinjia's cultivation level is much higher than his, and the realm of the Great Tao is basically the same as his Silk Rainsword domain. If the two of them fought, Yinji Jinren believed that he would be able to crush and even kill him. But the real Yinjia never imagined that the enemy Siyu sword intent was indeed only at the high level of the Tao domain realm, but Qin Daoxian's other space sword intent had already reached the law realm, and it had reached the middle part of the law realm. If he knew this information, Yinji Jinren would have said nothing, and directly asked Minghuang Jinjuan for help. But no if. In order to recover Zhenangwen, Fairy Qiyao went directly to the space teleportation formation between Qinyuan Jianzong and Lin Wuxianqing. And the enemy's intelligence secret? But there is no such fast means to transmit the information back to Zhenangwen. Even Qin Daoxuan's famous battle in Wangxinghai more than 2 months ago, Zhenangwen didn't receive any news, otherwise the real Yinjiu would never dare to be so careless. In the eyes of Yinjiu Jinren, he knows the top Jindan Jinren in Wanxinghai. As long as he doesn't encounter the top real people on the Jindan real person list, Yinji real person is confident that he can compete with each other. Even if he encounters Wanxinghai's top real person, as long as he is not the one who ranks high on the Jindan real person list, he will be sure to save his life. As we all know, since most of the Jindan cultivators began to focus on body refining and have fourth-order spiritual armor, their life-saving ability is generally relatively strong. This caused the 2 Jindan cultivators to fight, and it would be difficult to kill each other if one was not stronger than the other. Qin Daoxuan's strength is so much stronger than Ji Suhui, and it was not after he was caught in the space cage that he used the laws of space to completely wipe out his body and golden core. Even Qin Daoxian, it is impossible to kill Ji Suhui casually. Humph! A majestic roar directly suppressed the clamor of the millions of monks in the Jinan army. Immediately afterwards, a flash of light flew out directly from Zhenangwen and came to Qin Daoxian in the blink of an eye. Seeing that the main lord was finally willing to show his face, a slight smile appeared on Qin Daoxuan's face. The result of this war is becoming a reality little by little according to what he had expected. After winning the real Yinjiu, the Jinan army will attack with all its strength, and the 6th order defensive formation may not be broken. Boy, before you die, sign up for the taboo. Like Qin Daoxian, Immortal Yinji directly took off his spirit armor and wore only a black Taoist robe. It seems that in the face of Qin Daoxian, who is not as good as his younger generation, the real Yinjiu is not willing to take advantage of him. In fact, he did this to restore the momentum of his own army. On the other hand, he was afraid of scaring Qin Daoxian away. Although Qin Daoxuan's cultivation is far inferior to him, the realm of the Great Tao is the same as his. It is not so easy for Yin Vulture to keep the other party. Both sides were relaxed and freehand in their hearts, but they showed a serious look on their faces. When Qin Daoxian heard this, he sneered, "Do you think you can beat me with a higher cultivation level than me?" Hearing these words, Yin Jiu felt certain in his heart and said with a smile, "Just try it and you'll know." Heard. Qin Daoxian stopped talking nonsense. Immediately unfold the Silk Rain Sword domain, and rushed towards Yinji Jinren. Seeing Qin Daoxian choose melee combat, Immortal Yinji immediately smiled. "Melee? Exactly what I want." Having said that, he also flashed a light to greet him. But just when the two were about to meet face to face, Immortal Yinjiu suddenly realized that something was wrong. Immortal Yin Vulture flickered and then retreated sharply. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian didn't chase after him, and quietly watched him retreat until Immortal Yinjiu slammed into a layer of transparent space barriers. At this time Yinjiu Jinren raised his head in despair, and the fear in his eyes could hardly be restrained. Law Realm, you actually reached the Law Realm." He raised his hand tremblingly and pointed at Qin Daoxian. You, how can you be so shameless?" Qin Daoxian looked at the real Yin Vulture who was locked in the space cage by him, and heaved a sigh of relief. Don't look at him easily sealing the real Yin Vulture in the space cage. In fact, it is not so easy to do all this. Because when Immortal Yinjiu was out of the city, Zhenangwen was a few miles behind, and Qin Daoxuan's space cage was difficult to get close to the 30-mile range of the 6th Order defense formation. It is not impossible to forcibly break through the radiation range of the 6th Order defense formation, but it is easy to be noticed by the real Yin Vulture. At that time he would hide directly in the formation and could not come out, and Qin Daoxian would only be helpless. But fortunately, everything is developing as he expected. Right now, Immortal Yinjiu was directly trapped by his space cage, and if he wanted to break Qin Daoxuan's space cage, a mere cultivator in the later stage of Jindan could not do it. Just when Qin Daoxian thought the overall situation was settled, Yinjiu Daoist quickly took out a communication jade talisman from the storage ring, and shouted, "Minghuang Jinjuan, save your life, the enemy has a Law Realm real person." Chapter 322. True Monarch Yuanying? Hearing Immortal Yinji's call for help, Qin Daoxuan's footsteps stopped, his eyes narrowed slightly and he waited intently. Sudden. He felt that the space cage that he had condensed into with the laws of space encountered a ferocious impact that was hard to resist. Not good. Qin Daoxuan's face changed suddenly. Boom. With just one blow, the unbreakable space cage in the eyes of Jindan Cultivator became shaky. The real Jindan in the middle of the law realm is interesting. In Qin Daoxuan's ear, a faint voice suddenly sounded, and an unprecedented sense of crisis enveloped him. This feeling was very similar to the first encounter with Zhou Mubai, who was already in the Zifu period, when he was only in the Qi refining period. Unfathomable. Yes, that's how it feels. In the sixth order grand formation of Zhenangguan, a figure slowly walked out. As this figure approached the sky step by step, whether it was the army of more than 1 million monks from Wanxinghai, or the defenders of the Shenqing Dao League stationed in Zhenangguan, all became silent. At this moment, all the eyes of heaven and earth were focused on the monk who was slowly advancing step by step in the sky. True monarch Yuanying. This kind of imposing manner far surpassed that of Jindan Jinren, only Yuanying Jinjuan can have it. True monarch Minghuang glanced at the immortal Yin vulture trapped in the space cage, then turned to look at Qin Daoxian and said with a smile, I didn't expect this seat to be sitting here, and I was waiting for such an arrogant person to be in vain. Decades of perseverance. Qin Daoxian looked at him intently, cupped his hands and said, What do you call senior? The common name of this seat has long since forgotten, but, the fellows call me Minghuang Jinjuan, you can call me that. True monarch Minghuang. It's him. Qin Daoxian immediately recalled the information about all Yuan Jinjuan of Shenqing Dao League. True monarch Minghuang, as a late Yuanying cultivator, was second only to the existence of the top true monarch, the hall master of Zhenhai Hall, and had always been the focus of the Qinyuan sword sect Shadow Hall. Regarding the information about this true monarch Minghuang, before coming to Zhenangguan, Qin Daoxian also learned about the information recorded by Qinyuan Jianzong. Although the Qinyuan sword sect's Shadow Palace has never given up on collecting information on the Yuanying Jinjuan of the Shenqing Dao League, it is very difficult to collect their information due to the strength of the Yuanying Jinjuan. The Shadow Palace tried their best to collect only some information about the strength of true monarch Minghuang. As for the whereabouts of the other party, the Shadow Palace cannot be determined at all. If you want to track the whereabouts of a true monarch nascent soul for a long time, you must send a cultivator several grades higher than him. Compared with true monarch Minghuang, the late Yuanying cultivator's strength is several grades higher, at least he must be Yuan Shin Daojun. Sending Yuan Shin Daojun to follow the whereabouts of a Yuanying cultivator has no value in gathering intelligence. Therefore, in the world of immortal cultivation, as long as it is not a large-scale gathering of Yuanying Jinjuan, it is difficult to specifically determine the whereabouts of a Yuanying cultivator. Just like Qin Zhan, the master of Zhenhai Palace. As a top true monarch, especially a top true monarch who is good at the laws of space, his whereabouts can be said to be extremely difficult to grasp. Even sending a primordial spirit Taoist to follow him, it would be difficult to control his whereabouts. After all, with Qin Zhan's control over the laws of space, he can easily teleport over 1,000,000 miles without external interference. And Yuan Shin Daojun's divine consciousness can cover a radius of 100,000 miles, which is not bad. It is impossible to track Qin Zhan who has teleported 1,000,000 miles away. What about you? What's your name? True monarch Minghuang looked at Qin Daoxian with interest. Cultivator of Cangzhou, Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian. I remember. True monarch Minghuang nodded, then pointed to true master Yingji. Can my people be released? Qin Daoxian took a deep breath, shook his head and said, No, I have the ability, save myself. Okay. True monarch Minghuang smiled slightly. As soon as the voice fell, his figure instantly disappeared in place. Qin Daoxuan's consciousness was always focused on the opponent. He found that the disappearance of Minghuang Jinjuan was not a teleportation like him, but a pure high-speed movement in the air. Only the escape light can achieve a speed that is not inferior to teleportation in a short distance. How strong is the body of this true monarch Minghuang? Qin Daoxian was horrified. After the cultivator reaches the Jindan stage, the speed of escape will skyrocket again, and in the nascent soul stage, the speed of escape will become even more perverted, basically reaching a point that is difficult for low-level cultivators to capture. But even if Qin Daoxian knew that true monarch Yuanying escaped at an astonishing speed, he did not expect true monarch Minghuang to be so fast. Almost at the same time as the mind is running. True monarch Minghuang, who was outside the defense formation at Zhenangguan a moment ago, appeared in front of Qin Daoxuan's condensed space cage the next moment. Immediately after, true monarch Minghuang punched straight and bombarded the space cage condensed by Qin Daoxian. Whoa! The space barrier of the space cage, like a broken mirror, was instantly shattered by a punch from Minghuang Jinjuan. Immortal Lingzhou, who survived the catastrophe, was speechless when he saw true monarch Minghuang. Sir, the cultivator of the Jindan stage in the middle of the law realm, it is normal for you to be no match, so I don't blame you. True monarch Minghuang said gently. Hearing this, Ingzhou Jinren couldn't help feeling that a scholar would die for his confidant. He bowed his hands to Jinjuan Minghuang, and then returned to the defense formation of Zhenangwen in a sullen manner. Seeing the real Ingzhou escape, Qin Daoxian didn't care at all. Right now, all his attention is on this true monarch Minghuang. This true monarch Minghuang is the most powerful enemy he has encountered since he embarked on the path of cultivation. The late nascent soul cultivation base, the realm of the high section of the law of fire. Qin Daoxian said secretly. This is the cultivation base and avenue realm of true monarch Minghuang recorded in the Qianyuan sword sect's intelligence. I have to say that this information about true monarch Minghuang is extremely concise. What secrets the other party knows, what powerful magical tools, especially how the body training is, there is no record in the information. Although Qin Daoxian was confident that he had played all his cards before, he was comparable to a mid-dollar monk. But this one in front of him is a genuine late nascent soul cultivator, who is only one level weaker than the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. Qin Daoxian never thought that he would encounter such an opponent so early. But to be afraid it's not. With his strength, coupled with his good at space laws, even if he can't beat this true monarch Minghuang, there is no problem in escaping. Not only was he able to escape, Qin Daoxian even had the confidence to escape with the descendants of the Qin family. Of course, as for the remaining Zhangzhou cultivators and Qianyuan sword sect disciples, he had no choice. There are more than 1 million monks, not to mention whether he can escape with his life. It is impossible for this true monarch Minghuang to give him such an opportunity. Qin Daoxian looked at true monarch Minghuang and said, "If you want to fight in another place, you won't be able to use it here." Hearing this, true monarch Minghuang looked back at Zhenangwen, nodded and said, "Please." Qin Daoxian immediately disappeared and flew more than 1,000 miles to the side of the battlefield here, followed by true monarch Minghuang. The two were far away from Zhenangwen and the Wan Xinghai monk camp, and they all relaxed. A Jindan real person in the middle of the space law, in terms of strength, is almost not weaker than the ordinary nascent soul cultivator. Although true monarch Minghuang thinks that Qin Daoxian's strength is far inferior to him, but when they really fought, the two broke out with all their strength, and they might destroy the Sixth Order defense formation of Zhenangwen. After all, the defensive formation was only presided over by the Jindan cultivator, and its defensive power was very limited. Now both of them have no ideological burden, and naturally they are all relaxed. Facing each other, whether it is Qin Daoxian or true monarch Minghuang, they are all very confident. Qin Daoxian's confidence came from the fact that on his way to Zhenangwen, he integrated two thoughts into the law of space and the sword intent of Siyu. Now he has been able to use the law of space and the sword intent of Silk Rain at the same time, and reluctantly use them to set up a sword formation of two ceremonies. Although the Silk Rain sword intent has not transformed into the Silk Rain law, it can at least make his space law power skyrocket. Compared with the law of fire, the law of space has some advantages, plus the bonus of the Silk Rain sword. Whether Qin Daoxian's two-yield sword formation can rival Minghuang Zhenjin's law of fire movement is really two things. Take 10,000 steps back. Qin Daoxian's cultivation level is much lower than that of true monarch Minghuang, and the two-yield sword array he displayed is no match for the other side. When Qin Daoxian was in the Zifu period, he once displayed the Star Sword Dao map. At that time, the power that this map erupted was no less than that of the true monarch Yuan Ying's full force of Dao domain coercion. Now that Qin Daoxian's cultivation has broken through to the golden core stage, especially when the space sword intent has transformed into the law realm, the power of the Star Sword Dao map will only skyrocket again. Because the power of the Star Kendo map is not only related to the monk who uses it, but also related to the type and depth of the laws on this map. Qin Daoxian's space sword intent has transformed into space law, and the power of the Star Sword Dao map will inevitably go further. As for the specific level, even Qin Daoxian himself does not know. Because it takes too much mana to use Xingqian Kendo diagram. Even if he is in the golden core stage now, he cannot use it for a long time, so he has never tried to use this treasure. After all, the Xingqian Kendo map is essentially a pure Yang fairy weapon. Pure Yang immortal artifacts can be used by Jindan monks and even Zifu monks at will. Seeing Qin Daoxian so confident, true monarch Minghuang grinned and disappeared immediately. Qin Daoxian, whose consciousness locked onto the opponent, showed teleportation at the moment when true monarch Minghuang disappeared, and his figure disappeared in place. Really? At the moment when Qin Daoxian disappeared, True Monarch Ming Huang appeared in the position where he stayed before. Teleport? True Monarch Ming Huang nodded. That's interesting. After speaking, he stopped talking and approached Qin Daoxian again and again by relying on the escape light, while Qin Daoxian relied on the laws of space and kept teleporting, just not contacting him. After hundreds of chases, True Monarch Ming Huang got tired of it, and he frowned. Do you think you will be invincible by teleporting? Qin Daoxian stopped and smiled lightly. Fighting relies on strength, not mouth. Humph. True Monarch Ming Huang snorted coldly, and immediately took out a small tower-shaped magic weapon from the storage ring. Xinhuang Town Sky Tower, go. 5-level high-grade magic weapon. Qin Daoxian immediately recognized the rank of this instrument from the aura of the instrument. But the strange thing is that after the True Monarch Ming Huang sacrificed the Xinhuang Town Sky Tower, the tower did not attack Qin Daoxian, but hung beside the True Monarch Ming Huang. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian's expression changed immediately, and he thought of a possibility. Dao Domain Magic Weapon. It's a little bit of knowledge. Although Qin Daoxian had never seen the so-called Dao Domain Magical Tool, its imitation, the Domain Magical Tool, was famous among the low-level monks in Wanxinghai. Qin Daoxian remembered that when he first went to the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, he bought a refined jade slip of a first-order domain magic weapon. It's just that the name of the domain magic tool sounds very powerful, but it is actually just the most simple imitation of the Tao domain magic tool. The so-called Dao domain instruments must be used only when the monk's Dao realm reaches the Dao realm. The full name of Dao domain magical artifact should be Dao domain augmented magical artifact. Its function is very single, that is, to increase the power of the monk's domain. It stands to reason that after the Dao realm of the Yuanying cultivator reached the Law realm, the Dao realm that was once condensed in the Golden Core stage, its power has also risen, far from being comparable to the original. But in fact, when Yuan and Jinjuan fought each other, he rarely used Dao domain. If the Dao domain mastered by the nascent soul cultivator is compared to a net, then the law he masters is a sharp knife. Using the Dao domain to deal with the low-level Jindan cultivator is naturally easy to capture, but if it is used to deal with the Yuanying true monarch of the same realm, the Dao domain will be torn apart by the opponent in an instant, making people laugh. This is also the reason why Qin Daoxian and True Monarch Ming Huang have chased so far, but neither of them have used Dao domain. But is it true that Yuan Ying's engine's Dao domain has no effect at all? It's not true. If it is said that under normal circumstances the Dao domain displayed by the Yuan Ying cultivator is an ordinary net, then after the Dao domain is used to initiate, this net becomes an iron mesh, a steel mesh, and the power is increased tenfold. In this way, the Dao domain displayed by the Yuanying cultivator can naturally pose a threat to the cultivator of the same level. Of course, it's just a threat, relying on the Dao domain to defeat the opponent, unless the gap between the strengths of the two is as large as that of the top true monarch and the early nascent soul cultivator, it will never be possible. But right now, what true monarch Ming Huang wants to do is not to let his Dao domain defeat Qin Daoxian, but to use Dao domain to prevent or delay the frequency of Qin Daoxian's teleportation. With the speed of true monarch Ming Huang, once Qin Daoxian's teleportation speed was delayed, he had to be forced to fight with him. And if you fight hard and true monarch Ming Huang is confident, that will be Qin Daoxian's death. Although the Jindan real person in the middle of the law realm is rare, it is impossible to be the opponent of the late nascent soul monk. Seeing that true monarch Ming Huang took out the Taoist magic weapon, Qin Daoxian knew that he could no longer hide his clumsiness. Otherwise, if the trump card is not taken out and the true monarch Ming Huang is directly punched to death, then there is no reason to do so. Just the moment when true monarch Ming Huang sacrificed Xinhuang Town Tianta, Qin Daoxian opened his mouth and spit. A star map like a pitch-dark sky flew out of his mouth, and it was his most hidden trump card, the Star Kendo map. Chapter 323. Young Sect Master, you can't get closer. It is about 500 miles away from the battle center between Qin Daoxian and true monarch Ming Huang. Fairy Qiyao and his party were standing in the air, observing the battle between Qin Daoxian and true monarch Ming Huang with their divine sense. Under normal circumstances, Jindan cultivator's consciousness can easily cover thousands of miles. But right now the two nascent soul-level powerhouses are fighting, and Fairy Qiyao and others are thousands of miles away, and they can't see the situation at all. At the center of the battle between Qin Daoxian and true monarch Ming Huang, the law of the fierce confrontation between the two distorted the space, and it was difficult to approach with the spiritual consciousness of Fairy Qiyao and others. The only way is to fly closer. but the closer the two are fighting, the greater the risk. Although the Jindan cultivator is much stronger than the Zifu cultivator, he is not even qualified to watch the nascent soul cultivator fighting. However, Qin Daoxian and true monarch Ming Huang are much stronger than ordinary nascent soul cultivators. With Fairy Qi Yao, the strongest of the seven, only has the cultivation level of the middle stage of Jindan, and the risk of watching the battle at close range is indeed greater. Fairy Qi Yao turned her head and glanced at the Jindan cultivator who reminded her, thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Don't come close, just here." Her voice just fell. Qin Daoxian also ended the conversation with true monarch Ming Huang, and the two fell into an anxious chase. Half an hour. Fairy Qi Yao couldn't help but breathed a sigh of relief as the war between the two warring men reached a stalemate. Zhenangwen has a cultivator of nascent soul in charge, and a late nascent soul cultivator sits in charge, which she never imagined. In the Qinyuan sword sect's information, there was no mention of the news that Zhenangwen had monks in the late Yuanyin period. Otherwise, Qinyuan Jianzong would never send their mere 8 Jindan cultivators to recover Zhenangwen. Fortunately, among the 8 Jindan cultivators, although the other 7 were not very strong, there was Qin Daoxian, a top real person who could compete with the nascent soul cultivator 1 or 2 times. Thinking of this, Fairy Qi Yao couldn't help but secretly call her luck. If it weren't for Qin Daoxian, Fairy Qi Yao couldn't help shivering. I am afraid that their Jinan army will be wiped out like the Zhenangwen cultivator back then. Normally, with a lineup of 7 early Jindan cultivators plus a mid-stage Jindan cultivator, there is simply no qualification to resist the late nascent soul cultivator. Even if these 8 Jindan cultivators form a battle against each other, it will have no effect at all. The strength gap is so large that even the formation cannot make up for it. Just as Fairy Qi Yao breathed a sigh of relief, the only middle-level Jindan cultivator suddenly said, "Look, fellow Taoist Qin," and the true monarch Ming Huang stopped. Hearing the words, everyone concentrated their consciousness and probed towards the two fighting people. Sure enough, just as the middle-stage Jindan cultivator said, true monarch Ming Huang chased Qin Daoxian many times to no avail, hovered directly in the air, and took out a magic weapon from the storage ring. It's a 5th-order high-grade magic weapon. Among the 7 Jindan real people, there is a Jindan cultivator who is good at refining tools. He recognized the rank of the small tower taken out by Ming Huang Jinjuan at a glance. Xian Huang Jintian Tower, it is a Taoist magic weapon. Not good. When she heard the Tao domain magic weapon, Fairy Qi Yao was suddenly shocked. As a Jindan cultivator in the middle of the Taoist realm, Fairy Qi Yao is very clear about how much the Taoist power displayed by the monks will be improved with the blessing of the Taoist magic weapon. The Tao realm displayed by the late Yuan cultivation base of true monarch Ming Huang was a lot stronger than the Tao realm displayed by the Jindan cultivator, plus the increase in the Tao realm instruments. If Qin Daoxian does not have a deep understanding of space transmission, I am afraid that he will not be able to break the solidification of Ming Huang Jinjuan Tao domain on space. At that time, Qin Daoxian couldn't even perform teleportation. Once the teleportation cannot be performed with Qin Daoxian's escaping speed, he is forced to fight recklessly with a late nascent soul cultivator, then the result. Not only Fairy Qi Yao but other Jindan real people also saw this, and their mood suddenly became nervous. There are even a few active-minded Jindan real people, who are already thinking about whether to run away in advance. After all, after Qin Daoxian was defeated, the unlucky ones were the 7 of them. Anyway, Qin Daoxian can still use the space law in the middle of the law realm to deal with true monarch Ming Huang for a while. When they meet true monarch Ming Huang, it is definitely a one-shot ending and there will be no surprises. Fairy Qi Yao also seemed to see the thoughts of several people and warned, "Before I set off, I have made a military order at the sect, and those who are timid in this battle will be executed. Even if you are lucky enough to escape this time, think about how you will face the pursuit of the sect after returning to the sect." Hearing this, the timid Jindan cultivators couldn't help lowering their heads. "Young sect master, look, what is that?" The only mid-level Jindan cultivator on the field suddenly said. Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao did not care about the timid people, and focused on exploring the changes on the battlefield. Under the investigation of divine sense, Fairy Qi Yao saw that Qin Daoxian actually took out a roll of the star map magic weapon and quickly unfolded it after the true monarch Ming Huang sacrificed the Xinhuang town sky pagoda. Moreover, Fairy Qi Yao faintly felt a trace of pure yang on the star map of Qin Daoxian. That's pure yang immortal artifact. Pure yang immortal artifact? How could it be a pure yang fairy weapon? Hearing the pure yang immortal artifact in Fairy Qi Yao's mouth, everyone forgot to be afraid at the moment. That's a fairy. The entire Qinyuan sword sect was inherited from the ancient sect, and in the entire sect, there was only one immortal weapon as the treasure of the sect. And Chen Daoxian, as a newly rising immortal family in Wanxinghai, He De Hining, actually has an immortal weapon by his side. At this moment, in the eyes of everyone looking at Chen Daoxian, in addition to all, there is also a hint of greed. In the world of cultivating immortals, anything that can be related to a true immortal will be highly sought after by all monks. The source law scattered in the real fairy source world is like this, and so is the pure yang fairy weapon in Chen Daoxian's hand. After everyone was amazed. Even if someone found out that the situation was wrong, they retorted, could the military commander be mistaken? As far as I know, the pure yang immortal artifact has extremely high requirements on the user's cultivation. Usually, only the master of Yuanshan can be reluctantly motivated. Fairy. Although Dao Yuchen's Dao realm is high, but his cultivation is only at the golden stage, how can he motivate the pure yang fairy weapon? Hearing this question, everyone came back to their senses and nodded in agreement. What Dao Yu Wang said is very true. That's right. Extremely. Hearing this question, Fairy Qi Yao didn't refute either, because she couldn't explain this phenomenon either. The star map in Chen Daoxian's hand does exude a trace of pure yang breath, and she has only seen this treasure with pure yang breath on the Emperor Yes Bell in the hands of the master. Seeing that the young sect master of his own family did not speak, everyone just assumed that she was wrong, and immediately stopped investigating. Just when the atmosphere in the crowd was a little dull, a Jindan cultivator suddenly said, "Everyone, why is it dark today? This? How could this be? Changing the sky is unheard of." Everyone noticed the vision and raised their heads in horror. Sure enough, just as the Golden Core cultivator said just now, the sky over 2,300 li was completely dark. Over the Jinan army barracks. The Cangzhou cultivators headed by Zhou Mubai, Chen Fuxing and others all looked into the sky where Chen Daoxian was leaving. He was anxiously speculating about the outcome of this battle. Zhou Mubai looked at the sky with 1,000 thoughts in his heart. Once upon a time he was still the arrogance in Chen Daoxian's eyes, but now he doesn't even have the qualifications to watch Chen Daoxian's battle. Just when he was emotional, the sky suddenly darkened and became pitch black. What happened? I don't know, it's suddenly dark. This? It was suddenly dark and everyone panicked. It's true that they are monks, but monks are also human beings, just a group of relatively powerful people. But right now, this group of powerful people will also feel panic in front of this scene of sudden changes in the sky. This kind of panic is the instinct of all kinds of creatures when they face natural disasters. In the crowd, Zhou Mubai and Chen Fuxing were much stronger than ordinary Zifu cultivators after all. After the two of them looked at each other, Chen Fuxing immediately expanded his consciousness and said to everyone, "Don't panic, we have to trust Patriarch Qin, he will definitely defeat the enemy and lead us back to Zenangwan." At this time, Zhou Mubai continued to shout, "Yes, Qin Jinren has never let down my Cangzhou cultivator, never before and will never let you down. Yeah, Qin Jinren is talented, and almost all battles are fought at a higher level, and this time he will definitely not lose." That's right. The Cangzhou cultivators seemed to comfort themselves, and they seemed to have some confidence in Chen Daoxian, and the panicked expressions on their faces became calm. The Cangzhou cultivators settled down, and under their influence the Qinyuan sword sect disciples also settled down. Seeing that the military's heart stabilized again, Zhou Mubai and Chen Fuxing looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. If Chen Daoxian and the enemy true monarch won't decide whether to win or lose, and the Wanxinghai cultivator, the first army broke down and fled for their lives, then it would be a big joke. In particular, Chen Daoxian won the battle, and when he came back to look he found that all the monks in the military camp had fled, and it was estimated that he would vomit blood. Zenangwan city head. Ingji Jinren, who escaped from Chen Daoxian's hands, was listening to his subordinate's advice. "Commander, all the Jindan cultivators of the enemy are not in the barracks at the moment. We can send Jindan real people out of the city to make a sneak attack at this moment, and we will definitely achieve great results." Hearing this, Jiozhen squinted his eyes and sneered, "Oh, sneak attack out of the city, since you want to sneak out of the city so much, I'll send you there, how about it?" Coach, I mean. To shut up. Seeing that the cultivator in the middle stage of Jindan still wanted to make a quibble, the real Ingio stared at him fiercely. "Senior brother Yu, I know that you are eager to make contributions, but here, I am the coach." Saying that, Ingio Jinren said with lingering fears, "I won't go anywhere until Jinjuan returns." Seeing that immortal Ingio had been frightened, the middle-stage Jindan cultivator surnamed Yu greeted him, but he was very disdainful in his heart. Because he knew that the real Yin vulture had been frightened by the real man who came to call the enemy. On the contrary, although he was slashed by Qin Daoxuan's sword, he never felt the despair of the real Yin Jiao. After all, Qin Daoxian never planned to kill him and he didn't feel Qin Daoxuan's killing intent, so he naturally felt that Qin Daoxian was not terrible. Immortal Yin Jiao was about to speak, but found that the sky suddenly became dark. This is... Immortal Yin Jiao and Immortal Yu surnamed each other, and both of them showed a trace of fear in their eyes. For some reason, Immortal Yin Jiao had a bad premonition in his heart, and at this moment he couldn't help but feel a hint of retreat. Compared with the real Yin vulture, he has the intention of retreating. True monarch Ming Huang is now facing the biggest crisis and pressure he has encountered since breaking through the nascent soul period. Now, he is no longer only wearing a black Taoist robe with the appearance of an immortal Taoist bone, but his whole body, including his eyes, is wrapped in fifth-order mid-grade spirit armor. But even if his whole body was protected by the black spirit armor, as the pressure on the spirit armor increased, cracks that were visible to the naked eye still appeared on the spirit armor. Even not only the spirit armor, but also cracks began to appear in the body of true monarch Ming Huang. What's even more terrifying is that in the cracks and gaps in his body, traces of black matter are being squeezed out of his fleshly body, and are wiped out little by little. As this black substance was repelled and wiped out, the terrifying fleshly body of true monarch Ming Huang began to weaken little by little. That's right, this black substance is the true meaning of immortality that Jindan cultivators dream of. Right now, under the pressure of Xingqian Kendo map, true monarch Ming Huang was not only unable to resist its attack, but even the most fundamental indestructible true meaning of the fleshly body was crowded out and obliterated. The world is suppressed, you are the world. True monarch Ming Huang gritted his teeth and roared. No, no, you are not in the world. He raised his head. It's this treasure, it's this fairy weapon. True monarch Ming Huang stared at Qin Daoxian, and he still looked relaxed and freehand before. But at this moment, his body, soul, and everything about him were suppressed by the Xingqian Kendo map. The first thing he couldn't resist was not the spirit armor on his body, but the Xianhuang Jintian pagoda he sacrificed. I saw a whimper from the khaki-yellow Xianhuang town sky tower, and flew directly towards the storage ring of true monarch Ming Huang. The pain in the eyes of true monarch Ming Huang disappeared in a flash, and he put the damaged small tower into the storage ring in distress. Losing the blessing of Xianhuang Jintian pagoda for his own Dao domain, the pressure on true monarch Ming Huang is even greater. Crack. On the black spirit armor, there were bursts of sour sounds. On the flesh, the black matter is passing faster and faster. Seeing this, true monarch Ming Huang finally made up his mind and resorted to desperate secret techniques. Fighting desperately with a Jindan real person, Jinjuan Ming Huang had never thought about it before, but at this moment if he didn't fight he would die and he couldn't help hesitating. 7 soul burning soul Dafa. True monarch Ming Huang roared, and in the sea of Dantian energy, he sat cross-legged on the nascent soul in the Z mansion, and suddenly a pinch of purple flames erupted, and his nascent soul actually burned. As true monarch Ming Huang's nascent soul was burned, an indescribable terrifying mana burst out from his purple mansion. Charged by this terrifying mana, true monarch Ming Huang found that he was actually able to move. However, the pain of nascent soul being burned made true monarch Ming Huang's entire face distorted. Die. I want you to die. I want you to die. True monarch Ming Huang roared, bursting out with all his speed and charged straight towards Qin Daoxian. 7017K. Chapter 324. Seeing that true monarch Ming Huang used the secret technique of fighting for his life, broke free from the suppression of the Xingqian Kendo map and rushed towards him, but Qin Daoxuan's face did not show any fear. Because of the loss of the restrictions of the Xianhuang Jintian Tower, he could teleport again. Before the true monarch Ming Huang rushed to Qin Daoxian, he saw him teleport and disappeared again. Seeing this, true monarch Ming Huang endured the pain of being stripped of the inextinguishable meaning of his fleshly body and the pain of his nascent soul being burned, and turned his head and fled. Want to escape? Qin Daoxian raised his brows slightly, sneered, then stretched out his palm and squeezed it hard, and a space barrier suddenly lay in front of true monarch Ming Huang. Go away. True monarch Ming Huang roared and punched the space barrier, smashing it to pieces. But this punch also made the figure of true monarch Ming Huang slam, and Dun Guang was forced to stop. Suddenly, true monarch Ming Huang realized that he was in a desperate situation. Neither fight nor escape. he turned his head, his eyes stared at Qin Daoxian fiercely, but he still confessed and said, "Daos friendly means I will fall down, you just need to let me go, Zenangwen Xianqing I am willing to give up, how?" Who knows that Qin Daoxian shook his head and said indifferently, "Fellow Taoist fights when he wants to fight and stops when he wants to stop. There is no such easy thing in this world." Hearing this, true monarch Ming Huang's complexion suddenly changed and he returned to his vicious appearance and said, "Fellow Taoist just has the upper hand, and if you continue to waste it, it's unclear who will die. Although I don't know what price you paid for using this pure yang immortal artifact, I don't believe you can keep going." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian didn't say a word, and continued to inject a mana into the Xingqing Kendo diagram, and the speed of the disintegration of true monarch Ming Huang's body suddenly accelerated. Damn. True monarch Ming Huang was in a hurry, stopped talking nonsense, turned his head and ran away. Qin Daoxian was far behind him, blocking his figure with space barriers from time to time. Originally, Qin Daoxian wanted to use the Liangyi sword formation to fight against true monarch Ming Huang, but he found that he had far underestimated the power of the Star Sword Dao map. With this pure yang immortal artifact in place, there is no need for a two-year sword formation. Only the repressive power of the Xingqing Kendo map, the true monarch Ming Huang cannot resist. Although the Star's Kendo map consumes a lot of mana, but at the speed at which true monarch Ming Huang's body collapses, he will definitely fall before Qin Daoxian's mana is exhausted. This is also the reason why the other party begged for mercy just now. Gradually, the speed of the collapse of true monarch Ming Huang's spirit armor and fleshly body became faster and faster. After about half a cup of tea, the aura on the black spirit armor on true monarch Ming Huang suddenly dissipated, and immediately, this fifth-order mid-grade spirit armor turned into a little light and completely collapsed and disappeared. Do not. Seeing the destruction of the protective body armor, true monarch Ming Huang showed a hint of despair in his eyes. After the spirit armor collapsed, the defense of true monarch Ming Huang suddenly dropped by a notch. Although true monarch Ming Huang has integrated the will of immortality into the depths of his body, he is much stronger than Ji Suhui, who was beheaded by Qin Daoxian. But this powerful fleshly body disintegrated and dissipated in only a few dozen breaths under the suppression of the Star's Kendo map. "I'm the elder of the Qingwei Taoist faction. You can't kill me, the Xianqing Taoist League will never let you go. Fellow Taoist, spare my life, I will do whatever you want, I just ask you to spare my life. You bastard, I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost." Ah. Threatening, begging for mercy, and scolding, true monarch Ming Huang abandoned all the dignity and face of a true monarch nascent soul in just a few dozen breaths just to survive. But Qin Daoxian remained unmoved, determined to kill him. An enemy of the late nascent soul, he did not dare to let go. Even if he himself is not afraid of the revenge of this late nascent soul true monarch, the Qin family behind him can't stand the care of a late nascent soul monk. Since offended, it will be completely eradicated. After killing true monarch Ming Huang and then recovering Jinan Pass, there will be no obstacles. Once Jinan Pass is captured, he will be free to go to the one-year appointment of the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. Die. In the void, the body of true monarch Ming Huang was almost shrouded in a cloud of black mist. These black mists were all the inextinguishable true meanings that he integrated into the body after he broke through the nascent soul stage. Qin Daoxian didn't know if there were any secret calculations left by the other party in these indestructible true meanings. As all the true meaning of immortality was stripped away, the body of true monarch Ming Huang collapsed almost instantly. Whoosh! Where the body of true monarch Ming Huang collapsed, a purple streamer flashed away. Oh, at this level, fellow Taoist still wants to escape? Qin Daoxian sneered. The next moment, a 3-inch tall purple villain slammed into the space barrier under Qin Daoxian's cloth. The purple villain turned his head, his eyebrows, eyes and face were exactly the same as those of true monarch Ming Huang, who was the Yuan Ying of true monarch Ming Huang. I saw the nascent soul staring at Qin Daoxian viciously, and immediately knelt down on the spot, saying sadly, "Friend Taoist is merciful, this old man has spent more than 1,700 years in his cultivation to this day, and I hope that friend Taoist will take care of this old man's hard work. Come on, spare my life." Saying that, kowtow like pounding garlic. Immediately, true monarch Ming Huang seemed to think of something, raised his head and said, "If fellow Taoists don't dislike it, I would like to make an oath of the great Tao and respect fellow Taoists as the master. Oh yes, I can still lurk in the Qingwei Taoist sect as a secret child, to inquire about the news of your master." Hearing that true monarch Ming Huang was willing to serve him as the master, Qin Daoxian didn't care too much, but when he heard that true monarch Ming Huang was willing to be the Dark Sun, to inquire about the news for him in the Qingwei Taoist sect, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel a little moved. As an old monster who has practiced for more than 1,700 years, true monarch Ming Huang has such vicious eyes that he could even see that Qin Daoxian was moved. Seeing this, he was ecstatic in his heart, but he didn't show it at all but directly swore, "I, the true monarch Ming Huang, make an oath of the great Tao here, and I would like to serve this fellow in front of me as the master, and if I betray, let me." My true monarch Ming Huang was bombarded by lightning and died. Boom. A dull thunder sounded, and the oath of the avenue was actually fulfilled. Owner. After making the oath of the avenue, true monarch Ming Huang immediately lowered his eyebrows and called Qin Daoxian his master. Seeing that this true monarch Ming Huang was able to bend and stretch, Qin Daoxian's heart moved, but he said, "Since you are willing to serve me as my master, then I will ask you, what treasures are there in the Qingwei Taoist sect to restore the soul?" The treasure that repairs the soul? True monarch Ming Huang was stunned for a moment, but he was horrified in his heart. Tai Shin Shui is one of the most secret things of the Qingwei Taoist sect. Only the monks above the middle nascent soul have heard of it in the entire sect. Even he, a late nascent soul cultivator, only knows that a drop of Tai divine water will be born in the sect in the near future, but he doesn't even know the specific date. How does this person know? True monarch Ming Huang couldn't help but think that there must be spies from the Qinyuan sword sect in the sect, and their status is extremely high. But right now he can't protect himself, so he can't care about any sect spies. Thinking of this, true monarch Ming Huang revealed all the information he knew. Tai Shin Shui. Qin Daoxian muttered. Now he finally knew what the one-year agreement was meant by the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. It is actually the treasure born from the Tai Immortal Pond of the Qingwei Taoism School, Tai Shin Shui. This treasure can be used to purify the soul of Yuanyin cultivators, and it will be of great help for Yuanyin cultivators to break through to the Yuanshan stage. No wonder Palace Master Qin said that it depends on my good fortune. If you want to grab Tai Shin Shui from the nest of the Qingwei Taoist sect, I am afraid that even Palace Master Qin is not sure about it. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's eyes flickered, and various calculations came to his mind. True monarch Ming Huang saw Qin Daoxian meditating, and flew to him pitifully, waiting for Qin Daoxian to fall. In the previous battle, true monarch Ming Huang not only used the 7-soul burning Dafa to burn the nascent soul, but then his body was destroyed, and the nascent soul was exposed outside the body. At this moment he is already crumbling and his consciousness is about to sink. But true monarch Ming Huang is still in high spirits, because he knows that only if he shows enough value now can he survive in the hands of this terrifying Jindan real person in front of him. True monarch Ming Huang never thought that one day he would be planted in the hands of a Jindan real person. Indulge for a moment. Qin Daoxian turned his head to look at true monarch Ming Huang and said, "If I let you go back to the sect to steal the Tai divine water, are you sure?" Hearing this, true monarch Ming Huang looked embarrassed. He cupped his hands and said bitterly, "Master, Tai Shin Shui is the treasure of my Qingwei Taoism. Even with my status in the sect on weekdays, it is very difficult. Get in touch with it, let alone now." Qin Daoxian looked at the appearance of Yuan Ying's spiritual light after the physical body of Ming Huang was destroyed, and nodded, "You are quite honest. Master's eyes are like torches, how dare you hide it? Pity?" Qin Daoxian shook his head. "I don't know what the master regrets?" Qin Daoxian's eyes were indifferent, and then he reached out and grabbed it, holding the nascent soul of true monarch Ming Huang in his hand. Suddenly the law of space broke out, directly strangling true monarch Ming Huang's nascent soul into pieces. Afterwards, nascent soul turned into a little bit of aura, dissipating between heaven and earth. Until his death, true monarch Ming Huang couldn't believe it, why he was so obedient when he was so obedient, that the real person in front of him would still kill him. Doesn't the other party know how much benefit a servant in the late nascent soul can bring him? Unfortunately, a servant who can bend and stretch, I really have no luck, so I can only let you die. Qin Daoxian looked at nascent soul dissipated in his hands and muttered. Although true monarch Ming Huang made the oath of the Great Way, this oath of the Great Way is not without solution. At least Qin Daoxian knew a way to break the oath of the Great Tao. As a Yuanying monk, true monarch Ming Huang had his body destroyed again. Even if Qin Daoxian spared his life, he would either take the body of others or take the path of reincarnation. Once the other party takes the path of reincarnation, the oath he made at this moment is just a piece of bullshit. Moreover, Qin Daoxian was sure that if the opponent was reincarnated as a soldier, he would definitely him off before he was resolved. Therefore, Qin Daoxian naturally had to smash the other side to ashes, and not give him any chance at all. There are countless examples of monks with higher cultivation levels capsized in the gutter, and there are countless examples in the world of immortal cultivation, not to mention that he, a Jindan cultivator, faced a late nascent soul cultivator. About thousands of miles away. Fairy Qiyao and the others watched Qin Daoxian and true monarch Minghuang chase and flee, and flew out of their spiritual detection range, and did not dare to follow them to check. Because the power that Qin Daoxian just displayed when he used the Stars Kendo map was really terrifying. Seeing Qin Daoxian displaying the Star Sword Dao map, Fairy Qiyao actually had the illusion of facing the little uncle. But how could this be possible? Although his little uncle was a mid-Yuan cultivator before, he was a real monarch. The so-called top true monarchs are not randomly divided, but a strict division of strength made by the nascent soul cultivators based on their personal cultivation, Dao realm, secret methods and magical tools. Although this division of strength is not rigorous, it is enough to serve as an important reference for the fight between them. For example, what true monarch Minghuang encountered today was not Qin Daoxian, but the hall master of Jinhai Palace. I'm afraid he wouldn't even dare to fight in person, and he would run away without saying a word. This is the true monarch Yuaning's perception of each other's strength. Qin Daoxian's own strength, although he can also be classified into the nascent soul level, but it is still difficult to compare with the Minghuang Jinjuan. This time he was able to kill true monarch Minghuang, all thanks to the pure Yang immortal artifact Xingshan Kendo map. Although the power of the Stars Kendo map is far inferior to that of the pure Yang immortal artifact, it is far more powerful than the 5th order magic tool or even the 6th order magic tool. Only in this way Xingshan Kendo can reverse the strength gap between him and true monarch Minghuang in one fell swoop, and help him kill the opponent. Sect Master, what should we do now? Next to Fairy Qiyao, the only middle stage Jindan cultivator asked. Hearing this, Fairy Qiyao shook her head. I don't know either, let's wait until fellow Daoist Chen comes back. You think he will win? Fairy Qiyao was slightly startled when she heard this. Before she knew it, she thought that Qin Daoxian would win a late nascent soul true monarch. If this word spreads out, I am afraid that people will be regarded as crazy. Even if the real person of Shinjue was invincible in the Jindan stage, he would not dare to say that he could win a late nascent soul cultivator. Could it be that he, Qin Daoxian, is stronger than the real Shinjue of the year? That is a peerless fierce man who, by his own strength, has caused chaos in the Sea of Stars in several states. Unconsciously, Qin Daoxian has grown to this point. Fairy Qiyao still remembers the scene when Qin Daoxian accompanied her to trap the real Shinjue who was hiding in the space of Shenfu. How many years have passed? Thinking of this, Fairy Qiyao couldn't help but look in a trance. Young sect master. Seeing Fairy Qiyao distracted, the middle stage Jindan cultivator beside him couldn't help calling softly. Fine. Fairy Qiyao, who came back to her senses, smiled, then looked in the direction where Qin Daoxian disappeared. I think he will win. The young sect master's eyes are like torches. Qin Daoxian. Hearing this familiar voice, Fairy Qiyao turned around excitedly, only to see that the space in front of her was torn apart, and a figure came out from the torn space gap. Seeing the man in white in front of her, Fairy Qiyao couldn't help but feel the urge to cry. Who knows, in the short period of time less than a stick of incense watching Qin Daoxian and true monarch Minghuang fight, Fairy Qiyao, who was calm on the surface, collapsed inside. You won. Qin Daoxian nodded and said with a smile, fortunately, I didn't humiliate my life. Chapter 325. Jinan Army Barracks. Zhou Mubai, Qin Fuxing, and the others watched Qin Daoxian and the others flying towards them, their faces suddenly filled with ecstasy. It's back, it's back. Who is back? Qin Jinren. Qin Jinren is back. Inside the camp, happy voices rose and fell one after another. Qin Jinren won? Yes, we won. We have won, and there is hope to recover Zenangwen, and there is hope to recover Zenangwen. Haha, I knew that Qin Jinren would definitely win. In the temporary immortal mansion of the commander of the Jinan army, all the cultivators gathered together. At this moment, the monks who can stand here are at least in the late period of Zifu. Of course, there are exceptions such as Qin Fuxing, who is only cultivated in the middle of Zifu. However, although Qin Fuxing's cultivation is not high, his strength is not inferior to Zhou Mubai. Qin Daoxian turned his palm to suppress Ji Suhui, which not only made Qin Daoxian famous in Wanxinghai, but also Qin Fuxing, a junior Jianxiu of the Chen family, also became famous in Sangzhou. At this moment, All eyes were focused on the white figure in the main seat. Although Qi Yao was the head coach of the Jiangnan army, with the power of this battle, Fairy Qi Yao refused to let Qin Daoxian sit under her no matter what, and insisted on letting Qin Daoxian sit on the main seat. The other Jindan real people, facing Fairy Qi Yao's humility, all showed the expressions they deserved. After all, the idea of respecting the strong in the immortal world is deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, and only the strongest can sit in a high position. The patriarch and the sect master, even if they are not the strongest in the clan and sect, are definitely among the best. Otherwise, as a leader of a force, his own strength is not strong, and he cannot suppress the situation at all. The reason why the Qinyuan sword sect could not be twisted into a single rope was also related to the fact that the sect master concubine Qin Shui did not have the strength to crush everything. If concubine Qin Shui was a primordial spirit Taoist, Yi Yin and other elders would not dare to waste a word in front of her. Now, although the head coach of Jiangnan army is still Fairy Qi Yao, including Fairy Qi Yao herself, all eyes looking at Qin Daoxian at this moment reveal a sense of admiration. Everyone sit down. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Qin Daoxian waved his hand and said with an easygoing expression, "Thank you, real man." Everyone looked at each other in dismay, then cupped their hands and then took their seats. Seeing the crowd seated, Qin Daoxian said with a smile, "This time Zhenengwen is guarded by the true monarch of the nascent soul period secretly, and I didn't expect it, but luckily the crisis is lifted, and it is imperative to recover Zhenengwen." Hearing this, everyone's eyes were filled with eager eyes. True monarch Yuanying was defeated by Chen Jinren. How could the enemy army at this time be able to stop them from the South Army? Seeing that everyone was full of confidence, Qin Daoxian coughed and said, "Of course, although the enemy is gone, if we want to take Zhenengwen, we have to take a long-term plan." Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao, who was sitting on the lower left of Qin Daoxian, nodded and said, "What Dao Yuqin said is very true. Although Zhenengwen's Yuanying Jinjuan was removed, Zhenengwen itself still has a sixth-order defense formation. The cultivator at the peak of Jindan sits in the town, but it is not easy to break." Hearing this, all the Jindan cultivators in the immortal mansion nodded. What Fairy Qi Yao said was exactly what they were worried about. A ninth-level Jindan cultivator relies on the benefits of the spiritual veins to preside over the sixth-level defense formation, which is indeed not so easy to break. This level of defense formation, even if Yuanying Jinjuan came, would also have a deep headache. Seeing everyone frowning, Qin Daoxian continued, "You don't have to worry, the sixth-order defense formation hosted by the ninth-layer Jindan cultivator can only block the attack of one nascent soul true monarch at most. Even if there are many Jindan cultivators in Zhenengwen to preside over the formation, we still have a war immortal boat that can be leveraged. In addition, my Jiangnan army sergeant can form an attack and I personally take action. It should be no problem to break this formation." When everyone heard that Qin Daoxian made his own move, they immediately remembered the existence in front of him who had defeated a true monarch nascent soul. Moreover, the Yuanying Jinjuan defeated by Qin Daoxian was still a late Yuanying cultivator, and if he joined the attacking Zhenengwen formation, breaking this formation was really just around the corner. Thinking of this, everyone's faces turned from cloudy to sunny. Aside, Fairy Qi Yao seemed to think of something, took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, and handed it to Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian took the jade bottle flying towards him, and looked at the other side suspiciously. Fairy Qi Yao saw the doubts in Qin Daoxian's eyes and explained, "This is the 10,000-year Bell Spirit Milk, which is given to me by the Master to restore the mana before leaving, and please don't dislike it." Wanyan Bell Spirit Milk? Qin Daoxian's eyes lit up when he heard the name. Different from the Huichi Dan and Huiyuan Dan used by low-level monks, the Wanyan Bell Spiritual Milk is a treasure that naturally restores mana. This treasure is divided into 3 grades according to the year: the 1,000-year stalactite, the 10,000-year stalwart, and the 100,000-year stalactite, which correspond to the monks of the Jindan period, the monks of the Yuanying period, and the monks of the Yuanshan period to quickly restore mana. You must know that in the process of fighting the law, the party with abundant mana can take a huge advantage in the deadlocked battle situation, which shows the preciousness of this treasure. Qin Daoxian took the jade bottle, thanked him and put it in his storage ring. He was not pretentious. At this time, for everyone, the recovery of Zhenengwen was the most important thing. And during the battle with true monarch Minghuang just now, his mana was depleted quite a bit. Not only did the mana in his own Dantian Qi deplete, but even the mana stored in the power spirit armor was not much. The star's kendo map is strong, but it cannot be used as a conventional method at all. This treasure consumes too much mana. If this true monarch Ming Huang had a stronger physical body today, or had a fifth-order high-grade spirit armor to protect his body, Qin Daoxian might not necessarily be able to consume more energy than the other party. But the outcome of not being able to consume the opponent is that Qin Daoxian was defeated and fled. With the stars and kendo map, it was basically impossible for the opponent to kill Qin Daoxian. Not to mention true monarch Ming Huang, even a top true monarch, if he is not good at space law, it is extremely difficult to kill Qin Daoxian. Xingqian kendo map suppressed, teleported to escape. Qin Daoxian basically fights if he wants to fight, and escapes if he wants to. Even if his current space law is not strong enough and the teleportation distance is limited, he still has the treasure of Michin banner in his hand, and he can escape 10 times at the farthest. Thousands of miles away. For a distance of 100,000 miles, even the divine consciousness of the top nascent soul true monarch could not cover such a distance. In other words, the current Qin Daoxian already has the confidence to save his life in the hands of the top true monarchs. You must know that he is only a first-level Jindan cultivation base. The next day, with Wanyan Bel Lingru as the backing, Qin Daoxian, whose mana had completely recovered, stood in front of the Jinan Pass once again. This time he did not lure the enemy out of the border. Nonsense, true monarch Ming Huang has fallen into his hands. At this moment, as long as Immortality is not stupid, it is absolutely impossible for him to go out of the border stupidly and die. For the enemy at Zenangwan, the only way is to stick to Zenangwan and wait for reinforcements. It's just that the monks in Zenangwan didn't know that the reinforcements they were waiting for might never come. Attack. High in the sky, Fairy Qi Yao was wearing a spirit armor and a red cloak, and with her beautiful face, the whole person looked heroic. Following this order, on a huge white immortal boat, the lines of the formation suddenly lit up. Immediately afterwards, the spiritual energy gathered by the formation patterns became more and more intense, and at the front of the immortal boat, a thunder ball slowly condensed. Qin Daoxian looked at the immortal boat and silently calculated the time for its condensed attack. 30 full breaths. The power of the thunderball accumulated to the apex, and it exploded suddenly. Boom! The ferocious thunder beam bombarded the sixth-order defense formation in Zenangwan, and the ripples of the formation light curtain were constantly bombarded. I don't know if the attack of this war immortal boat was too fierce, or if the defense formation of Zenangwan was not as strong as everyone imagined. Qin Daoxian only felt that the formation light curtain in front of him had become weaker. How is this possible? Qin Daoxian's face was full of disbelief. Although the attack of this war immortal boat is strong according to his estimation at most, it is only between the attack strength of the monks in the early nascent soul and the middle nascent soul, and it is impossible to weaken the sixth-order defense formation of Zenangwan with a single blow. Unless... Qin Daoxian thought of something, called out Qingying's sword directly, and slashed towards Zenangwan with one sword. Fairy Qi Yao also found out what was wrong with Zenangwan at this moment. Her beautiful eyes showed excitement and shouted, "Continue to attack, don't stop. Others follow me." The voice just fell. Fairy Qi Yao followed behind Qin Daoxian and attacked the defense formation at Zenangwan. More than 1 million cultivators from the Jinan army attacked together, and the light curtain of the defense formation at Zenangwan only swayed and shattered like a bubble. Why is it so easy? It's too easy. How is this possible? I don't know. Qin Daoxian and other Jindan cultivators can't believe everything in front of them. This formation is too simple to crack, so simple that everyone can't believe it. You must know that this is a sixth-order defense formation. If the sixth-order defense formation is hosted by the true monarch Yuanying, it will be the attack of the top true monarch, and the opponent will not be afraid at all, which shows the horror of this formation. Qinyuan Sword Sex Protector Array, the Qingkuan Yinyang Locking Array, is essentially a giant array composed of sixth-order arrays. Although the defense of this formation is definitely stronger than that of the sixth-order formation in Zenangwan, it will never exceed the defensive limit of the sixth-order formation. This level of formation was actually broken by their Jinan army in a single attack? It's hard to believe, but the truth is the truth. As the Zenangwan formation method was broken, the Jinan army overwhelmingly killed the enemy in the Qingguan million-level monk battle. The entire battlefield can be described as dark. But the result was not a stalemate as Qin Daoxian expected, but a one-sided massacre. The reason is simple. On the Jinan army side there is Qin Daoxian, a strong man comparable to the late nascent soul, plus 7 Jindan real people, and on the Shenqing Dao League side only 5 Jindan real people are stationed in the city. Qin Daoxian didn't need to slaughter the low-level cultivators of the enemy army, He only needed the consciousness to cover the audience and remove the more difficult bones. For example, the enemy's Jindan real person, the genius Zifu cultivator with amazing combat power, and so on. His divine sense can easily cover more than 2,300 miles, and the entire Zhenangwen Pass, including its 2 satellite cities, is shrouded in Qin Daoxuan's divine sense. Where there is resistance, Qin Daoxuan's flying sword will appear. The precise surgical strike shattered the enemy's heart of resistance in an instant. Once the psychological defense collapses, the next is a one-sided slaughter. The monks of the Shenqing Dao League scrambled for each other, for fear that they would fall behind their colleagues and be beheaded by the monks of the Jinan army. This kind of situation of rushing to escape is 10%, even if the superior general shouts and kills the fleeing people, it cannot stop the collapse of the Shenqing Dao League. Not to mention that once Qin Daoxian found out about the generals in the enemy's army, he would greet him with flying swords and take the enemy's life. A slaughter-style battle went on for a whole day and night, and the shouting of killing gradually stopped. When the Jinan army took over the defenses of Jinan Xianqing and cleared away the scattered resistance monks in the city gate, Qin Daoxian, together with the top brass of Jinan army, had already stood in the largest immortal palace in Jinan Xianqing. This immortal palace was originally the practice place of true monarch Ming Huang. At this moment, it has become the temporary commanding camp of the Jinan army. Inside Asgard, Qin Daoxian looked at the middle-stage Jindan cultivator with a rebellious face in front of him, and said in surprise, "You mean Master Yinjie escaped yesterday while I was fighting true monarch Ming Huang?" Hearing this, the middle-stage Jindan cultivator looked even more angry and shouted, "The Yin vulture is greedy for life and fear of death. The sect master will not let him go. And you guys, don't be too happy too soon." Kneeling on the ground, he glanced at everyone and said coldly, "The Dao League will definitely avenge this blood revenge for us." This middle-stage Jindan cultivator is none other than Qin Daoxian, who was the first to fight with him when Qin Daoxian called the battle yesterday. "What is your name?" Qin Daoxian looked at him. This Jindan cultivator was reluctant to say any more, but when he met Qin Daoxuan's eyes, he felt a sense of emptiness and he muttered, "This is Yu Shuyuan. If you want to kill it, you must be slaughtered. It's a rather bookish name and the person is quite tough." Qin Daoxian nodded, turned his head to look at Fairy Qi Yao and said, "Since this fellow Taoist requested so, then kill him?" "All right." Fairy Qi Yao nodded and immediately slashed with a sword, completely obliterating the body of this real Yu. When he died, this real Yu had his eyes wide open in disbelief. After a few breaths, Fairy Qi Yao completely wiped out this real Yu Zenran's body in Jindan. Kill the last enemy real person in Jinan Xianqing, the 5 Jindan cultivators in this city for die and 1 escape. The Jinan army side won a great victory. Not only a Jindan real person was not damaged, but even the cultivator of the Zifu period was damaged very little. Fairy Qi Yao knew in her heart that Qin Daoxian was able to achieve such a brilliant victory this time. "Next it's up to you." Qin Daoxian turned his head, just in time to touch Fairy Qi Yao looking up at his beautiful eyes. Fairy Qi Yao blushed and immediately said sternly, "Don't worry, the rest is to count the captives and harvest and report the good news to the sect. I can handle it." When it comes to reporting the good news to the sect, not only Fairy Qi Yao but the rest of the fellow Jindan Real people are also smiling. In this battle to regain Zhenangwen, although they did not contribute much, their credit is also indispensable. Not only that, compared with the reward of Qinyuan Jianzong after the recovery of Zhenangwen, the harvest in this city gate is the real big deal. It must be clear that Zhenangwen is a large immortal city with more than 1 million troops. How many logistics and shops should be served in this city for these sergeants? These are all shining spirit stones. Perhaps to the top true monarch who is bent on breaking through the Yuanshan stage, the spirit stone is nothing. But for them, the early and middle stage cultivators of Jindan, the wealth of a whole immortal city was enough to make them go crazy with excitement. 7017K. Chapter 326. In Asgard. Seeing that Zhenangwen Xianqing was taken down, everyone was excited. The only middle-level Jindan cultivator stood up, first glanced at Qin Daoxian, and then cupped his hands to Fairy Qi Yao. "Commander, this battle is a big victory. The next loot." Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, "According to the rules of the sect, 30% of the spoils will be handed over, and the rest will belong to the soldiers who participated in the war." Hearing this promise, everyone's expressions became even more excited. Qin Daoxian is not very interested in these spoils. The Qin family's Guanhai Xianqing earns a lot of spiritual stones every day. with the cooperation between Guanhai Xianqing and Yuanqin Xianqing. The daily profit earned by the Qin family is increasing day by day, and until now, even Qin Daoxin himself does not know how many spirit stones the Qin family can earn every day. Qin Daoxin was more interested in the storage ring from true monarch Ming Huang than the loot seized in Zhenangwen Xianqing. The storage ring of a late nascent soul cultivator may be sold as spirit stones, which is not as great as the harvest of Zhenangwen Xianqing, but it must be some extremely precious treasures that are difficult to buy. Before, Qin Daoxin was thinking about breaking Jinan Pass, but he didn't have time to count it. Now that Jinan Pass has been taken down, he finally has time to check this storage ring. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxin said to everyone in the court, "The distribution of the spoils, you discussed the distribution, I have to retreat for a few days." Hearing that Qin Daoxin was going to retreat suddenly, Fairy Qi Yao thought he was injured in the fight with true monarch Ming Huang. Her pretty face tightened and she stepped forward and said, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Qin Daoxin shook his head with a smile, then took out a storage ring. "Like you, I also deal with spoils." Seeing the storage ring on Qin Daoxin's finger, everyone reacted. Although their hearts are very hot, everyone knows that this storage ring left by the true monarch is not something they can get their hands on. No wonder Qin Zhen despised the seizure of Zhenangwen Xianqing. People thought so. Qin Daoxin randomly found a quiet room in Asgard. Then he found a set of Tier 3 formation flags from the storage bag, and simply arranged a set of Tier 3 protection formations. Then he sat cross-legged on the futon with peace of mind and checked the storage ring. This storage ring was left by true monarch Ming Huang. Although true monarch Ming Huang's soul was much stronger than Qin Daoxin's, the imprint of his soul on this storage ring was stronger than that of Jindan Cultivator. However, with the fall of true monarch Ming Huang, the imprint of the soul on the storage ring has disappeared. Qin Daoxin only used his divine sense to wash away the imprint of the soul on the storage ring. Seeing that the imprint of the soul was removed, Qin Daoxin looked happy and immediately opened the storage ring. Compared with the storage ring he carried, the storage ring worn by true monarch Ming Huang has a 3-point larger internal space. Of course, the size of the storage space was not the focus of Qin Daoxin's attention. What he is most concerned about is the treasure in the storage ring. Among the storage rings of true monarch Ming Huang, they can be roughly divided into 4 types. The first type is the sundries that true monarch Ming Huang uses in his daily practice in life. These things, after being swept by Qin Daoxin's consciousness, put them aside. The second is the spirit stone. Even nascent soul cultivators still have a place to spend spirit stones, so it is not surprising that the nascent soul cultivators store spirit stones in their storage rings. It's just, this spiritual stone is too many, isn't it? Qin Daoxin frowned. This storage ring is almost filled with spirit stones, at least 90% of the space is filled with spirit stones. He only scanned it roughly with his divine sense, and found that the storage ring contained at least 1 billion spiritual stones. Although these spirit stones are a considerable amount of wealth for the Yuanyin cultivators, is Qin Daoxin someone who lacks spirit stones? Seeing that true monarch Ming Huang's storage ring is full of spirit stones, it is impossible for Qin Daoxin not to be disappointed. But soon he adjusted his mood. Check out the third treasure, which is the magic weapon. This is Qin Daoxin's most important treasure. The fifth-order instruments used by Yuan-Ing Jinjuan are very precious. Usually, even if the monks have enough spirit stones, they may not be able to buy them. In Wanxinghai there are only 2 sources of fifth-order magic tools. The first one is made by fifth-order artifact refiners. As far as Qin Daoxin knew, there were only 2 fifth-order item refiners in the entire Wanxinghai. One is true monarch Yuanqin, and the other is the master of the refining hall of Qin Yuan sword sect, Huyanqi. And neither of these 2 is the master who lacks spirit stones. It is conceivable how difficult it is to ask them to help refine the fifth-order magic weapon. The ordinary Yuan-Ing Jinjuan really doesn't have such a big face. Even though Qin Daoxin had some friendship with these 2 people, he was embarrassed to only pay for spirit stones and let them help refine the fifth-order magic weapon. In addition to the fifth-order artifact refiner refining the fifth-order magic weapon, Yuan-Ing Jinjuan wants to obtain the fifth-order magic tool. There is only one way to promote it with the power of good fortune. This method is much more reliable than asking a fifth-order item refiner to do it, and every nascent soul cultivator can do it. But a treasure like the power of creation requires a lot of time and energy of the nascent soul cultivator to extract it from the spiritual stone. This is the reason why many nascent soul cultivators have no more than 2 fifth-order instruments on their bodies. Qin Daoxin's Qingying sword can be promoted to the 5th rank middle grade. One is the purification of the power of creation, and the other is the improvement of his Dao realm, which has allowed the Qingying sword to be promoted. Found it. After doubling the search, Qin Daoxian finally found the Taoist magic tool used by true monarch Ming Huang in the storage ring of Nuoda Shenhuang Jintian Tower. Strictly speaking, this is an earth attribute magic weapon, which is not only inconsistent with the Dao law understood by true monarch Ming Huang, but also with the space law mastered by Qin Daoxian. The earth attribute is quite a match for Fuxing's thick earth sword intent. Qin Daoxian muttered a word and put away this treasure. Shenhuang Jintian Tower is still too high for Qin Fuxing. I am afraid that this magic weapon will drain his mana before he can activate it. Besides, this tower is a Taoist magic weapon, and its function is to increase the power of the Taoist realm. Qin Fuxing has not stepped into the Taoist realm at this moment, and he will not be able to use this treasure in a short time. Putting away the Shenhuang Jintian Tower, Qin Daoxian picked out 3 fourth-order high-grade instruments. It's just that the fourth-order magic weapon has not been paid much attention by Qin Daoxian, and he just checked it a little and put it into his storage ring at will. After reading the magic weapon, Qin Daoxian focused his attention on the last treasure, the medicinal pill. The elixir of true monarch Ming Huang is specially placed on a shelf in the storage ring. This shelf is very large. At first glance, it is full of jade bottles. It is simply estimated that there are at least hundreds of jade bottles on the shelf, and each jade bottle occupies a square of the shelf. Seeing these high-level medicinal herbs, Qin Daoxian became slightly interested. So far, the only treasure that Qin Daoxian found in the Ming Huang's engine storage ring was the only treasure of interest, which was the 5th-order high-grade Taoist magic weapon of Shenhuang Jintian Pagoda. Don't look at the fact that when true monarch Ming Huang used Shenhuang Jintian Pagoda, it didn't play a big role, but that was because Qin Daoxian's kendo map of stars was too strong. If it weren't for this, Qin Daoxian would be like a bug stuck by a spider's web, with the tower's increase in the Dao domain, and it would be very reluctant to even cast escape light, let alone teleport. Right now, these high-level medicinal pills in the storage ring are the second thing Qin Daoxian is interested in. Like high-level instruments, it will become very difficult to buy medicine with spirit stones when it reaches the 4th or even 5th order. For example, the most famous Jijin Dan among the 4th-order medicinal pills. This kind of treasure that assists cultivators to form pills can't be bought with only spirit stones. Zhou Mingho, the head of the Zhou family in Sangzhou, used the gold knot elixir that the Zhou family bought from a true emperor of Yuan Ying from the Qin Yuan sword sect. As for the 5th-order medicinal pills that are of great use to true monarch nascent soul, it is even more difficult to buy them with spirit stones. Unless it is the power of creation. Otherwise, ordinary true monarchs would not be willing to trade these precious treasures with spirit stones. Looking at the jade bottles on the shelf, Qin Daoxian eagerly checked them one by one. Chalcedony Dan, Zifu Dan, Zhuyan Dan. A piece of spiritual pill above the 3rd rank was taken out from the forbidden jade bottle by Qin Daoxian as if he had opened a treasure chest. Jingjin Dan. Qin Daoxian's face was overjoyed when he opened a 4th-order spirit pill to form a golden pill. The 4th-order spiritual elixir and the golden elixir, even for the Qin family, are quite precious treasures. After all, this thing can help the cultivator of Zifu to condense the golden elixir. Although the later golden elixir calamity still depends on the cultivator, this elixir can still increase the probability of the cultivator forming the elixir by 30%. For almost any Zifu cultivator, this thing is a treasure that determines the fate of the road. After all, in the world of immortality, there are very few cultivators like Qin Daoxian who have broken through to the golden elixir stage without using any medicinal pills. Open the treasure box, and open a gold knot. Qin Daoxian was greatly encouraged, and he opened the treasure box even more excitedly. Soon Qin Daoxian took out the high-level elixir. 80% of these elixir were 3rd-order elixir, and the remaining 20% were 4th-order elixir. As for the 5th-order elixir, Qin Daoxian didn't find a single one. The 5th-order elixir is really precious. Qin Daoxian sighed while taking out the elixir from the jade bottle. Also, if there is a 5th-order elixir that is helpful to true monarch Ming Huang, he has already taken it, and it will be placed on the shelf of the storage ring. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling a little frustrated. Originally thinking about the storage ring of a late nascent soul cultivator, there were some treasures that surprised me, but I found out that the treasure of this true monarch Ming Huang, not to mention the treasure possessed by Qin Daoxian. Even compared with the treasure in the Qin family's library, it is far inferior. So poor, I'm so embarrassed to be called Jinjuan. Qin Daoxian complained. Although he complained in his heart, Qin Daoxian's unboxing action was not slow at all. Third order elixir, third order elixir, third order elixir. As the third order elixir was taken out, Qin Daoxuan's excited and anticipating expression became Gujing Wubua again. Until pregnant baby Dan. A purple elixir the size of a glazed bead with a tire-like pattern appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. It was the treasure that helped the Jindan cultivator break through to the nascent soul stage, the pregnancy and infant pill. As soon as the pregnant and infant Dan came out of the jade bottle, he ran rampant and wanted to break through the air. But this quiet room, not only was he set up a third-order protective formation, but also shrouded in a space cage. The pregnant baby Dan hit the space barrier and was instantly bounced back. Qin Daoxian quickly raised his hand and put the restless pregnant and infant pill into his palm. The smile on his face could no longer be restrained. The pregnant baby pill, even for him, is of great use. Although with his current Dao realm, breaking through to the nascent soul stage in the future is almost a sure thing, but increasing the probability of breaking through the nascent soul stage is a good thing. He happily put the pregnant and infant pill into the storage ring, and Qin Daoxuan's enthusiasm for unboxing suddenly became strong again. But then there are no surprises waiting for him, all of them are third order or fourth order elixir. Phew. The last one. Qin Daoxian casually opened the ban on the jade bottle, only to find out that the jade bottle contained no spiritual elixir. This is the power of creation? Qin Daoxuan's eyes widened, and after a closer look, it was indeed the power of creation. He once traveled to the true immortal origin realm and obtained 200 drops of the power of good fortune. The Yingying sword in his hand was promoted to the 5th rank middle grade with the power of good fortune. Only now, the 200 drops of the power of creation have already been squandered by him. Although Qin Daoxuan's strength is strong, the strength of his soul is not enough for him to extract the illusory power of creation in the spirit stone. In fact, even if Qin Daoxian could extract it at the rate of 1 drop a year, he couldn't wait at all. Too slow. Qin Daoxian looked at the power of creation in the jade bottle, counted it carefully, and found that there were 67 drops. 67 drops. Isn't this what the true monarch Ming Huang was sitting in Zhenangwen, and he had nothing to do to extract it? Qin Daoxian muttered. Immediately, he thought that true monarch Ming Huang's body protection spirit armor was only of the 5th rank middle grade, and he was more certain of this guess in his heart. Do you want to promote the spirit armor to the 5th rank top grade? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel fortunate. Fortunately, the other party didn't have time to use these powers of fortune to advance to the spirit armor rank, otherwise the outcome of this battle between the two sides might have to be rewritten. After inventorying the storage ring of true monarch Ming Huang, for Qin Daoxian, a total of 3 treasures can enter his eyes. The first is the Xianhuang Jintian Pagoda, a 5th order high-grade Taoist magic weapon. The second is the 5th order high-grade spiritual pill, the pregnant and infant pill. The third item is 67 drops of the power of creation. These 3 treasures, let's not talk about the pregnancy and baby pill for the time being, he will not be able to use these things for the time being. Xianhuang Jintian Tower and the power of 67 drops of good fortune can quickly improve his strength. 67 drops of the power of creation, needless to say, whether it is to improve Siu's sword intent or to improve the law of space, it can enhance his strength in a short time. As for the Xianhuang Town Tianta, it can also increase Qin Daoxuan's strength. It seems that the Xianhuang Town Tianta seems to be in conflict with the Xingqian Kendo map. After all, the Xingqian Kendo map also has the effect of suppression, which overlaps somewhat with the function of the Xianhuang Town Tianta to increase the Taoism. But using the Stars Kendo map is too expensive for Qin Daoxian. In this battle with true monarch Ming Huang, it seems that Qin Daoxian won very quickly, killing a true monarch nascent soul in half a cup of tea. But at the same time, his mana consumption has bottomed out. In other words, if true monarch Ming Huang can hold on for half a cup of tea, Qin Daoxian will be the one who will lose. As for the Xianhuang Jintian Pagoda, it is a low-end version of the Stars Kendo map, which is far inferior to the Stars Kendo map in terms of repressive power, but at the same time it consumes much less mana. Compared with the two, this tower is more suitable for use in conventional fighting. Chapter 327, Jinan Xianqing. 3 days have passed since the city gate was taken down. In the past 3 days, Zhenangwen has gone from noisy to deadly. The once bustling Xianqing became extremely depressed due to the war between Qianyuan Jianzong and Xianqing Dao League. The shops on both sides of Xianqing Street were either smashed or the doors were closed, and there was no one at all. These shops were all opened by monks under the rule of the Shenqing Taoist Alliance. At this moment the immortal city was destroyed. Although the fate of these monks would not be punishable by death, they would inevitably be taken away from their net worth. Some longer and beautiful female nuns will be kidnapped on the spot by the sergeant of the Jinan army and used as a trophy. In this cruel world of immortality, the moral standard of monks is not as high as that of the civilized society of the previous life, and there is no saying that they must not slaughter civilians. Once one side is defeated, whether it is an army cultivator or an ordinary cultivator, the best outcome is to become a prisoner. More monks didn't even have the chance to become prisoners, and were directly killed on the spot. Just like the fate of those Zhangzhou cultivators when Zhenangwen fell, most of them were slaughtered and only a few became prisoners. This little scene was nothing in the more than 400 years of the Azuma War. Asgard quiet interior. Qin Daoxian sat cross-legged on the futon, and everything that happened in Jinan Xianqing seemed to have nothing to do with him. At this moment he is paying full attention to the changes in the Dantian Qi. To be precise, it is the change in the Kendo map of stars and stars in the Sea of Qi in Dantian. On the stars Kendo map, 2 stars, one large and one small, are embellished, which are the 2 stars formed after the realization of Qin Daoxuan's space law and the Siyu sword intent. Only now, the stars transformed by the Siyu sword intent are beating violently. This kind of beating is not because the Siyu sword intent is about to be promoted to the Siyu law, but an alternative transformation. If anyone who is proficient in the sword intent of the water movement sees this scene, they will find that Qin Daoxuan's sword intent of the rain is changing towards the sword intent of the water movement. Sword intent as a branch of water traveling sword intent. The potential of Siyu Jianyi is limited, and it can only be promoted to the 6th level world realm at most. If you want to continue to be promoted, you must convert the Siyu sword intent to the water Xing sword intent. But it is not a simple matter to transform from the branch sword intent to the complete water movement sword intent. Qin Daoxian belonged to a crooked road in the past, and now he wants to forcibly reverse it. The price he pays must be much more difficult than someone who has never set foot on the road of Kendo. But fortunately, to understand the sword intent, the most important thing is comprehension. And what Qin Daoxian lacked the most was comprehension. In the sea of knowledge, the comprehension stars like giant celestial bodies slowly rotate, and as the comprehension stars rotate, traces of dust-like matter detach and disappear from the comprehension stars little by little. With the consumption of comprehension stars, Qin Daoxuan's comprehension also skyrocketed. Qin Daoxian found that since the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic broke through to the 3rd layer, not only has a function of Dao extension, but also the function of enlightenment has changed again. On the 2nd level of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, there is an additional preaching function, and the enlightenment function has changed from 10 times the original understanding to 30 times the understanding, a huge improvement. On the 3rd level of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, Qin Daoxuan's enlightenment function is no longer limited to how many times his comprehension. He found that his comprehension can be adjusted and controlled at will. Theoretically, there is no upper limit to how many times you want to have comprehension. But as the comprehension multiplier increases, the consumption of comprehension stars will also increase sharply. Qin Daoxian has tried it, and once he uses more than 100 times his savvy, this savvy star with a diameter of hundreds of miles will be consumed at a terrifying speed. To consume 100 times of comprehension, he estimated that in 3 days at most, this comprehension star formed by absorbing a large amount of chaotic energy from the true immortal origin realm will be exhausted. And if the comprehension used is less than 100 times, the speed of consuming the comprehension stars will suddenly decrease, and there is no change at all. At the moment, Qin Daoxian doubled his comprehension, which just reached 101 times, because he found that when his comprehension exceeded 100 times, he seemed to have entered an indescribable special state. The barriers that were difficult to comprehend and understand in the past have become simple and easy to understand in an instant with the blessing of more than 100 times of comprehension. It's like his silk rain sword intent. As a branch of sword intent of water traveling, once a cultivator sets foot on sword intent of silk rain, and then wants to embark on sword intent of water traveling, the price to be paid will be too great. According to the records of the Qianyuan sword sect classics, if you want to switch from the branches of sword intent, such as Siyu sword intent, extreme cold sword intent, etc., to the path of water traveling sword intent, you need to comprehend several branches of sword intent, and comprehend them into extremely high realm. Then, on the basis of these several branches of water-moving sword intentions, we can only comprehend the water-moving sword intention by integrating them into one. This method, just by the sound of it, makes the scalp feel numb. Qin Daoxian also planned to use this method to reverse his Siyu sword intent, but after his comprehension exceeded 100 times, he found that he didn't need such trouble. He was able to peep through the silk rain sword intent of the Taoist realm, and peep a trace of the sword intent of the water in the same realm. For other cultivators it was like a fantasy, but for Qin Daoxian, who was now 100 times more savvy, it was as easy as he could. On the stars kendo map, with the violent beating of the stars transformed by the Siyu sword intent, the originally light blue Siyu sword intent stars finally transformed into a clear water blue. Water moves sword intent. It's done. In the quiet room, Qin Daoxian suddenly opened his eyes, his face full of surprise. In the sea of Dantian gas, the star kendo map covers the top. On the star map, a bright space star like a diamond version stands in the center, and next to the space star is a water blue water star. These two stars are not only transformed by the law of space and the sword intent of the water movement, but also transformed by the shadow-bearing sword and the flying snow sword. Seeing that Shui Xing's sword intent was completed, Qin Daoxian was overjoyed and spit out. He saw a water blue star spit out by him. As soon as the water blue star appeared, it turned into a light blue flying sword and slowly revolved around Qin Daoxian. Looking at the Feishua sword that had been with him at the beginning of his cultivation path, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but gently stroked its blade. After Feishuagen was integrated into Qin Daoxian's thoughts, his spirituality soared again. Even if Qin Daoxian did not take the initiative to control it with his thoughts, it could make the most suitable response to Qin Daoxian's thoughts according to Qin Daoxian's thoughts. The so-called heart-to-heart, but that's it. After appeasing Feishuagen, Qin Daoxian took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, which was the jade bottle containing 67 drops of the power of creation. To promote the Siyu sword intent to the Siyu law was Qin Daoxian's idea at the very beginning. But before the implementation, Qin Daoxian wondered if he could transform the Siyu sword intent into the water-traveling sword intent with a broader path and greater potential. If it were another cultivator, it would be even more difficult to comprehend the sword intent of water traveling if one wanted to reverse the sword intent of Siyu into sword intent of water in a short period of time. But with more than 100 times the blessing of comprehension, Qin Daoxian turned the impossible into a possibility. Of course, in addition to the blessing of 100-fold understanding, Qin Daoxian also repeatedly observed the changes in the laws of the giant axe when he unleashed his axe. Because among the laws that the opponent comprehends, there is the law of water movement. After many observations coupled with Qin Daoxian's peeping through the Siyu sword intent, a trace of the water-moving sword intent, and 2+ reflections, Qin Daoxian reversed the wrong road he had embarked on in one fell swoop. Right now, the sword intent of Water Xing has been completed, and Qin Daoxian can't wait any longer. He directly thinks about using the power of creation to forcibly promote the sword intent of Water Xing to the law of Water Xing, so that his own sword of Water Xing can also step into the law realm. The cultivator has to step into the realm of law to be considered a true monarch. Check, check, check. The power of creation fell on the light blue flying snow sword drop by drop, and quickly merged into the sword body. With the integration of the power of creation, Qin Daoxian's thoughts into it can clearly perceive that the flying snow sword is rapidly transforming. This transformation is different from the previous transformation of the Siyu sword intent into the water-traveling sword intent, but a transition to a higher degree. Qin Daoxian's space sword intent has long stepped into the law realm, and he is familiar with this kind of transition. As time passed by little, the flying snow sword sometimes turns into a flying sword, and sometimes turns into a water blue star. The only thing that remains unchanged is its aura, which is getting stronger little by little. The volume after turning into a water blue star is also getting bigger a little bit. Boom! A roar exploded in Qin Daoxian's sea of consciousness and air at the same time. He knew that this was the sound of the soul shaking. When the space sword intent stepped into the law realm, there was also this change. Sure enough, after this roar, the water blue stars in front of Qin Daoxian were dozens of times larger than at the beginning. Overjoyed, Qin Daoxian called out the star sword Dao map and took back his water sword intent again. At this moment, on the stars and stars kendo map, the water planets are about 1/3 the size of the stars in space, and compared to the previously insignificant scene, they are like the difference between clouds and mud. See? Qin Daoxian simply called out the law of space and the law of water movement one after another. As diamond-like space stars and water blue water planets appeared in front of him, with a thought, the two stars turned into two flying swords. It is Qin Daoxian's birth sword, Qingying sword and Feishua sword. With the fusion of these two flying swords with the law of space and the law of water movement, the sword bodies of the Qingying sword and the flying snow sword also began to undergo different changes. In the past, the body of the Feishue sword was silver-white, while the Qingying sword was silver-gray. But now the flying snow sword has turned into light blue, and the Qingying sword has turned into a transparent color like a diamond. Qin Daoxian knew that after the immortal sword was integrated into the law gradually changed the physical properties of the flying sword. The domineering of the star's kendo map lies in this. The relationship between the law and the immortal sword is mutual influence and mutual promotion. Since the two have merged into one, it has become this relationship. Even Qin Daoxian noticed that after the water movement sword intent was transformed into the water movement law, the star sword map began to strengthen again. The magnitude of this enhancement is not as strong as the transformation of the space sword intent into the space law, but it has at least increased by about a quarter. Sure enough, the more and stronger the laws of Shinshin Kendo diagram, the stronger it will continue to become. Diagram raising swords, sword raising diagrams, that's what it means. Qin Daoxian said silently. The next moment he displayed the two-yield sword formation, and wanted to use the power of the formation to once again integrate the laws of space and water movement. Before, Qin Daoxian tried to fuse them with the sword array of two instruments after his mind was integrated into the Siyu sword intent and the law of space. However, the gap between the Siyu sword intent and the space law is too great. Even if there is a mind and two sword formations, and the two can be forcibly integrated into one, the increase that can be brought is extremely limited. Although Qin Daoxian didn't know how strong the high-level realm of the space law after comprehending the space strangulation, the two sword formations combine the space law and the silk rain sword intent, at most only increased the power of the middle space law by 30%. This increase does have a reputation for the fusion of negative laws and the soaring power. Among them, there is a reason why the degree of integration is not deep enough, but Qin Daoxian feels that the bigger factor is that the gap between silk rain sword intent and space law is too large. The two, one as bright as the scorching sun, and the other as small as a star, are not at the same level at all. Forcibly integrating them can increase their power by 30%, which is already a burning incense. This is also the reason why Qin Daoxian did not use the Liangyi sword formation immediately when he faced the enemy Minghuang Jinjuan. The middle section of the law of space has increased its power by 30%. And it is still too far to compete with the monks in the late stage of nascent soul and the high section of the law of fire. Not to mention that true monarch Minghuang is physically strong, at least 2 realms higher than Qin Daoxian's body refinement. Under various considerations, Qin Daoxian directly broke out his strongest trump card Shinshin Kendo map. It was this determination that saved his life. Otherwise, if he really uses the space law in the middle section of the law realm, plus the two sword formations formed by the combination of the silk rain sword intent in the high section of the Dao realm, he will fight against true monarch Minghuang recklessly. I am afraid that Qin Daoxian will be smashed into powder by the iron fist of Minghuang Jinjuan. Because the realm of Qin Daoxian's avenue is not much worse than that of true monarch Minghuang, but the basic cultivation base of the two sides is too different, and being beaten to death with one punch is already a more euphemism. Quiet indoors. The law of space and the law of water movement, under the link of the two swords, gradually merge into one. The water-blue fairy sword and the transparent fairy sword are constantly rotating and fused, and the law of space and the law of water movement are madly entangled together. Qin Daoxian felt that, compared to the giant axe he saw in the true immortal origin realm, although his behavior of the fusion law was tricky, the effect was not bad. The only difference is that his formation power is not strong enough, and the number of laws in realm is not enough. The power of the formation is not strong, but his formation realm is limited, and the number and realm of the laws are not enough, which means that he has limited access to enlightenment. But these are things that can be improved in the future, and Qin Daoxian is not in a hurry. Is this the result of the fusion of the law of space and the law of water movement by the two sword formations? Looking at the two swords in front of them that were completely integrated into one, exuding a terrifying power, Qin Daoxian's heart trembled. In front of him, this peculiar immortal sword was quietly suspended. On the immortal sword, two laws were entangled, fused, separated, and entangled, showing an extremely unstable state. Around the fairy sword, the space was like a rag torn into pitch-black holes. You must know that the space in the quiet room at the moment is reinforced and suppressed by the star kendo map, and it is not comparable to the space that is not reinforced outside. Even so, the space was easily twisted to pieces. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian did not dare to continue trying, and quickly removed the bond of the power of the formation. With the withdrawal of the two swords, the law of space and the law of water movement are like two mutually exclusive magnets, directly separated. Huh. If this sword goes down, the original true monarch Ming Huang can't bear it, right? Qin Daoxian stroked the two blue and transparent fairy swords and muttered, 7017K. Chapter 328, Squeak. Push open the door of the quiet room and withdraw the protective formation. The dazzling sunlight shone on Qin Daoxian's handsome face, causing him to narrow his eyes slightly. With his consciousness swept away, Qin Daoxian discerned the direction. His figure blurred for a while and instantly disappeared in place. Inside a hall, Wan Xinghai cultivator gathered together with a serious look. In the main hall, not only the 7 Jindan real people with the highest cultivation level are present, but also the actual power generals in the various armies are also present. Suddenly, Qin Daoxian's figure appeared in the hall, causing a whole exclamation. Qin Jinren. Qin Jinren is here. As soon as Qin Daoxian appeared, the greetings came one after another, showing how high his status was in the minds of the Jinnan army cultivators. Fairy Qi Yao, who was sitting on the main seat, saw Qin Daoxian and immediately stood up. Her pretty face was full of surprise. Fellow Daoist Qin, you're out of the border. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands to everyone with a smile, and finally fixed his eyes on Fairy Qi Yao, and said with a smile, I just came out of the customs and I met you guys discussing matters. What happened in the past few days? Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao's smile on her pretty face subsided. She nodded solemnly and said, something really happened. Oh. Qin Daoxian raised his brows slightly. It is thousands of miles away from Zhenangguan, Qingwei Taoist sect. It is different from Qinyuan Jianzong sect standing on the island, surrounded by large and small defensive formations built by cave worlds. The sects of the Qingwei Taoist sect stand among the continuous mountains. Overlooking from a high altitude, the sect of the Qingwei Taoist sect is surrounded by 9 immortal veins. After hundreds of thousands of years of blessings from the ancestors of the past dynasties, countless immortal veins have been arranged by the monks of the Qingwei Taoist sect. Defense formation. In terms of defensive power, the defensive formation of the Qingwei Taoist faction is only above the Qinyuan Sword Sect's Guardian formation. Qingwei Taoism, on a vast immortal pond like the sea, one after another silhouette sitting in the misty water vapor. If you look closely, you will find that the power emanating from these figures has all reached the nascent soul stage. Boom! A monstrous wave surged out from the depths of the fairy pond. A man wearing a silver-white Taoist robe with a somewhat feminine face suddenly opened his eyes. As the feminine man opened his eyes, the rest of the crowd were alarmed, and one after another Yuan Ying level consciousness came over. Metropolitan? The feminine man raised his head, looked in the direction of Izumo and frowned. Scarlet Jiaozhen is dead. What? Impossible. True monarch Qi Jiao is the top true monarch who could kill him. Could it be that primordial spirit Daojun took action? All of a sudden, the people guarding Tai Immortal Pond opened their eyes one after another and couldn't sit still any longer. True monarch Scarlet Flood Dragon is one of the top true monarchs in the Qingwei Taoist faction, ranking very high in strength. Compared to Ming Huang and his likes, true monarch Scarlet Flood Dragon is much stronger. Now everyone suddenly heard that true monarch Scarlet Flood had fallen. No less than Qinyuan Jianzong had fallen to a powerhouse at the level of a palace master. How could the sect not be shaken? This is a big event that affects the foundation of the sect. Seeing everyone's questioning, the feminine man's face was even more ugly, and he said solemnly, it was Linwu Jinjuan and Qinyuan Jianzong Shadow Hall's hall master who took action personally. Linwu Jinjuan personally led the army to attack the Scarlet Flood Dragon Immortal City. Mean? The shameless special of Qinyuan Jianzong. The two beasts, Lin Wu and the palace master of the Shadow Palace. For a time, the many nascent soul true monarchs on the Tai Immortal Pond were filled with righteous indignation. Although most people were very angry when they heard the news, there were also calm people who frowned and thought, Sect Master, Linwu Jinjuan has been stationed in Linwu Xianqing for hundreds of years, and he has always confronted my Xianqing Dao League and has never attacked in a big way. Will they suddenly attack so aggressively? The gentle-tempered Qingwei Taoist sect master pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, Elder Yun's consideration is reasonable. Although Qinyuan Jianzong and my Xianqing Taoist League have been fighting for hundreds of years, the Yuanying level war has never broken out for a few years. the field, let alone the top true monarch himself. The news of Tai Xinshui and our sect must have been leaked. This? Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to do. The meaning of the Qingwei Taoist sect master is very clear. There are ghosts in the sect and they are among the people present. These words undoubtedly made everyone look at each other's eyes with a slight change. At this time, a late nascent soul cultivator stood up and cupped his hands. Sect master, everyone, now is not the time to look for spies from the sect. The Scarlet Flood Immortal City is the biggest gate built by my Xianqing Dao Alliance in Izumo. Once the Crimson Flood Immortal City is destroyed, the Qinyuan Sword Sect's army can freely attack the small immortal cities stationed by my Qingwei Taoist faction. Elder, he is right. The most important thing right now is to block true monarch Lin Wu. Just as everyone was arguing, another message came over. Seeing this, everyone turned their attention to the sect master of Qingwei Taoism. The gentle-faced Qingwei Taoist sect master took out the communication jade talisman in front of everyone. But then his complexion became ashen. Metropolitan? Seeing the face of their sect master, everyone had a bad premonition in their hearts. Zenangwan was broken, and true monarch Ming Huang died in battle. Within a day, the news of the death of the two true monarchs was sent back to the sect, causing the entire Qingwei Taoist sect to be enveloped in a slaughter. Next moment, the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect stood up directly and ordered, "Pass my decree, order, all the nascent soul true sovereigns in the sect gather here, and rush out to the great immortal cities of the Cloud Country." Hearing this order, almost all true monarch nascent soul bowed their hands solemnly, abide by the decree of the sect master. After a stick of incense, one after another escaping light or driving a spirit boat or alone, flew out of the Qingwei Taoist defense formation, and flew in the direction of Izumo. With the help of Yuan Ying Jinjuan left. The Yuan Ying Jinjuan who stayed above the Tai Immortal Pond suddenly decreased by 90%. Metropolitan. The elder Yun surnamed Yun glanced at the sect master of Qingwei Taoism, bowed slightly and said hesitantly, "Could this be Qinyuan Jianzong's plan to move tigers away from mountains?" The sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect nodded. Elder Yun's concerns, this seat has also thought about it, but the immortal city of the Izumo country must not be lost. He turned to look at the elder Yun. Although Tai Xinshui has the effect of helping Yuanying cultivators to break through the Yuanshan stage, it is not absolute. If my Qingwei Taoist sect puts all bets on this treasure. Once Izumo was lost, Qinyuan Jianzong invaded our homeland, and I failed to break through the Yuanshan stage. Have you ever thought about the situation of my Qingwei Taoist school? This? Elder Yun frowned, and after a while he nodded. The sect master is thinking about it, but the old man is worried that Qinyuan Jianzong will send someone to raid my sect? Assault? The sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect suddenly showed a confident look on his face and said with a smile, "I really hope that Qinyuan Jianzong will really dare to send someone to take the opportunity to attack us." Heard. Elder Yun glanced at the unfathomable sect master, and immediately stopped talking. In any case, even if the Qingwei Taoist faction sent nearly 100 Yuanying true monarchs, there are still more than 10 Yuanying true monarchs in the sect at this moment guarding the Tai Immortal Pond, including the suzerain himself. Coupled with the Qingwei Taoist sect's guardian formation, Qinyuan Jianzong wants to send people to attack. At least dozens of Yuanying Jinjuan must be sent to attack together, and there is a glimmer of hope to break through the Qingwei Taoist sect. And now, how could the Qinyuan Sword sect still have dozens of Yuanying-level combat power? The Xianqing Dao League did not dare to say that they knew all the information about the true Emperor Yuanying of the Qinyuan Sword sect, but they knew the approximate number. Don't look at the more than 100 Yuanying Jinjuan in Qinyuan Jianzong. But at the same time, the territory of Qinyuan Sword sect is also very vast. One Xinghai has to leave a part of Yuanying Jinjuan to guard, and the real Demon World Channel also needs to leave Yuanying Jinjuan to guard. And at this moment, the Qinyuan Sword sect attacked Izumo with all their strength, and most of their nascent soul's combat power was probably transferred to the front line of Izumo. In addition, the sect of Qinyuan Jianzong always has to leave a few Yuanying monks to guard. After all, how could Qinyuan Jianzong still draw dozens of Yuanying monks to attack the Qingwei Daoist faction? And sending a few nascent soul true monarchs here, even if they are top true monarchs, is no different from sending them to death, and the Qingwei Taoist faction is naturally not afraid. Not to mention that the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect is astonishingly powerful. With him sitting in the sect, he can protect the sect and Tai Xinshui. Having said that, the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect still ordered, "Elder He. Subordinates are here. Let your people check carefully the movements of all the Yuanying monks in Qinyuan Jianzong in the near future. This, subordinates obey. The elder surnamed He bowed to his orders. Seeing that elder he was about to leave, the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect said again, "Also, remember to let your people bring some trouble to the base camp of Qinyuan Sword sect." Elder he touched the eyes of the sect master in front of him, his heart trembled and immediately nodded, "Yes, sect master." Zanangwen. Inside the hall. After Qin Daoxian listened to Fairy Qi Yao's narration, a storm surged in his heart. "You mean Qinyuan Jianzong attacked Izumo in an all-round way?" Fairy Qi Yao nodded. "Not only that, Lingwu Jinjuan has already captured Qijiao Xianqing." Hiss. Hearing this news, Qin Daoxian was shocked. Scarlet Flood Immortal City, but the Immortal City where Scarlet Flood Immortal Lord sits, as the top true monarch of the Shenqing Dao League, the status of Scarlet Flood Dragon True Monarch is like the master of the 7 halls of Qinyuan Sword sect. A true monarch of this level has actually fallen. Although Qin Daoxian didn't know how Qinyuan Jianzong did it, it was clear that Qinyuan Jianzong was determined to attack Izumo with all his strength. As for the purpose of Qinyuan Jianzong doing this, everyone present was unclear, but Qin Daoxian had a vague guess. Probably, to create opportunities for the Lord of Jinhai Palace. However, with the power of the Jinhai Palace Hallmaster alone, can he break through the Qingwei Taoist sect with a large number of nascent soul true monarchs in charge? No matter how you look at it, it's a bit like courting death. However, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but think that once the Tai Shinshui was conceived, a Yuan Shin Daojun was born in the Shenqing Dao League, and the Qinyuan Sword sect was also a dead end. The difference between early death and late death, it is no wonder that Qinyuan Jianzong is desperate. Is Sect Master Concubine so confident in the strength of Palace Master Qin? Qin Daoxian said secretly. Immediately his heart sank. No, Qinyuan Jianzong must not fall, at least not now. As a traveler, Qin Daoxuan's loyalty to Qinyuan Jianzong is almost zero. But the Qin family took root in Wangxinghai after all. Once the war broke out in Wangxinghai, the Qin family would definitely not be able to survive alone. Thinking of his record in retaking Zanangwen this time, the Qingwei Taoist faction must have regarded him as a thorn in the flesh. Once Qinyuan Jianzong fell, the first unlucky one would be his Qin family. On this point, Qin Daoxian was very clear. He didn't expect him to kill a late nascent soul monk of the Qingwei Taoist sect, and the two sides could still shake hands and make peace. The only way at the moment is to help the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace to successfully raid the Qingwei Taoist sect. This is not only for Uncle 13 but also for the Qin family. Once Wangxinghai falls, the fate of the Qin family will not be much better. Thinking of this, the relaxed mood after recovering Zanangwen became heavy again. Not only Qin Daoxian but everyone in the hall, all looked heavy. War always makes people feel heavy. But the war between Qinyuan Jianzong and Shenqing Dao League is no longer able to stop it. The two sides have been fighting for thousands of years, and they have already forged a feud. Unless the other side completely falls, this feud will never be eliminated. Everyone. Qin Daoxian spoke suddenly. When everyone saw the big man talking, they all turned their attention to him. Although Zanangwen was taken down, but now that Wangxinghai is attacking Izumo on all fronts, our Jinan army naturally can't stick to this city. Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao on the side was anxious, and she immediately transmitted a voice. Fellow Daoist Qin, Shizuan only asks us to stick to this city and not enter it rashly. Fairy, and rest assured. Qin Daoxian replied with a sound transmission and continued, therefore I suggest that I go to the enemy-occupied area to inquire about the news. Young Patriarch can't do it. The rest did not speak, and Qin Fuxing immediately stood up to object. Qin Jinjin, think twice. Yeah, by winning Zanangwen, our strategic goal has been achieved, and there is no need for real people to rush in. Everyone was discouraged. Fairy Qi Yao looked at Qin Daoxian with complicated eyes and was deeply moved. Qinyuan Jianzong's full-scale attack on Izumo is undoubtedly a bet on the luck of the sect. Once this battle is lost, Qinyuan Jianzong will not recover, but it will definitely go downhill. As the young sect master of Qinyuan Sword sect, how could he not be moved to see an outsider like Qin Daoxian working so hard for Qinyuan Sword sect? Not to mention Qin Daoxian, an outsider, he is a disciple of Qinyuan Jianzong's main sect, and there are several people who can achieve the level of Qin Daoxian when they are in a crisis of life and death. Thinking of this, Fairy Qi Yao could hardly restrain her affection for Qin Daoxian in her heart. She hurriedly stepped forward and said, Qin Daoxian, I'll go with you. This time he directly addressed Qin Daoxuan's name instead of Qin Daoyu. Chen Daoxian did not notice this slight change, turned his head to look at Fairy Qi Yao and said with a smile, "I understand the kindness of the young sect master, but I will go to investigate alone, which is more flexible." Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao immediately heard Chen Daoxuan's implication. Also, Chen Daoxian is extremely powerful. Although he has only Jindan cultivation base, his strength is comparable to that of true monarch Yuaning. With her strength, even if she follows Chen Daoxian, it is just a burden. Thinking of this, Fairy Qi Yao no longer insisted, nodded and said, "Then, you should be careful in everything." Chen Daoxian nodded, then glanced at everyone and disappeared in the hall with a flash. The law of space reaches the middle of the law realm and understands space teleportation. As long as Chen Daoxian does not die and falls into the formation arranged in advance by the enemy, even if several top true monarchs join forces, it will be difficult to win him. Seeing that the situation was not good, Chen Daoxian teleported, and then waved Mi Chen's flag and immediately fled more than 100,000 miles away. No matter which top true monarch saw it, he would have a headache. Chapter 329. Chen Daoxuan's figure appeared again. It is already in front of Jushua Xianqing in the southeast of Zhenangguan. Jushua Xianqing, also known as Jushua Pass, is an immortal pass 30,000 miles away from Jinan Pass. This immortal city was built by the Shenqing Dao League, and it is the front line of the Shenqing Dao League's defense of Wangxinghai. After crossing this immortal city, you have completely entered the area actually controlled by the Shenqing Taoist League. Today's Izumo Kingdom is divided into two by the defense line created by the Qianyuan Sword Sect and the Shenqing Taoist League. Half are under the control of Qianyuan Jianzong, and the other half are actually occupied by Shenqing Dao League. But whether it is Xianyang Sect or Qinghui Taoism, the country where their sect is located is not in Izumo, but somewhere else. Standing thousands of miles away from Jushua Pass, Chen Daoxuan's spiritual sense swept across the towering city walls of Xianqing. Jushua Xianqing was just like its name, a city wrapped in silver. This immortal city is located on an ice-attribute spiritual vein, which is shrouded in ice and snow all year round. Although he did not enter this immortal city, Chen Daoxian still felt the aura of several nascent soul monks in this immortal city thousands of miles away. It's just that compared to Zhenangguan's true monarch Ming Huang, the cultivation of these three nascent soul cultivators is not high, and the one with the highest cultivation is only in the middle nascent soul. Of course, Chen Daoxian would not judge a cultivator's strength based on his cultivation. After thinking about it, he did not enter Jianghu rashly, but disappeared in place in an instant. Inside the snow pass, the middle nascent soul cultivator with the highest cultivation base suddenly opened his eyes, and his consciousness swept across the entire immortal city. Who is spying on Zhu Xueqing? He raised his head and looked in the direction of Zhenangguan. Is that you? Chen Daoxian. The news of Chen Daoxian beheading true monarch Ming Huang has spread in the Shenqing Dao League in just a few days. The news that an early Jindan cultivator beheaded the late nascent soul true monarch is too exciting. In just a few days, it has become well known in the circle of Yuaning monks of the Shenqing Dao League. True monarch Ming Huang is not a weak Yuaning cultivator, but a real late Yuaning cultivator. Although true monarch Ming Huang may not be as powerful as a top true monarch, his strength is definitely more than 90% of nascent soul monks. It is such an existence that still falls into the hands of Chen Daoxian. Now there are rumors among the Yuaning monks of the Shenqing Dao League that this real Jin Dan named Chen Daoxian may have surpassed the so-called invincible real man. From ancient times to the present, I have never heard of such a fierce Jin Dan cultivator. Chen Daoxuan's figure reappeared, and he had already crossed the Jushua Pass thousands of miles away, and had completely entered the area of the Shenqing Dao League. When he arrived at the enemy's territory, Chen Daoxian no longer teleported in a grand manner, but used the breath-holding technique to restrain his own breath. I saw that his breath had decayed all the way from the early stage of Jindan. Late period of Zifu, middle period of Zifu, early period of Zifu. The aura he exposed to the outside world lasted until the middle stage of foundation building before it stopped. Cultivation in the middle stage of foundation building. This cultivation is very common in the world of immortals, and it will not be disturbed by some unsightly scorns. It's just right, Chen Daoxian secretly said. Immediately he controlled his facial skeletal muscles and moved quickly. About 10 interest. Chen Daoxuan's face has changed into another look, and even his height has been raised by 3 points. Appearance, body shape, breath all changed. Now, even if Chen Fuxing stood in front of him, he would not dare to recognize this person as his own young patriarch. Of course, although Qin Daoxian is proficient in the breath-holding technique, a cultivator with a stronger soul than him can still find flaws when he approaches. Therefore, Qin Daoxian had better stay away from true monarch Yuanying. However, Yuanying Jinjuan is not a Chinese cabbage. Although there are hundreds of Yuanying Jinjuan of Shenqing Dao League, but they are scattered in the country of Izumo and their sects, there are not so many Yuanying cultivators. In the major immortal cities of Izumo, and in the larger immortal cities, true monarch nascent soul is in charge. In an ordinary immortal city, at most there are only a few Jindan cultivators. Yuanying cultivator Qin Daoxian did not dare to say it, but Jindan cultivator, no matter how many he came, would only serve food in front of him. I have to say that Qin Daoxian, a cultivator with amazing strength, is shameless. Going to the hinterland of the Shenqing Dao League to destroy it will definitely involve the Shenqing Dao League's great energy. There are fewer Yuanying cultivators sent to encircle and suppress him, that is to say, if there are more people sent, Qin Daoxian will run again. Qin Daoxian felt a headache when he thought about it himself, let alone Shenqing Dao League. Now, the Shenqing Dao League still doesn't know that such a troublesome existence has been mixed into its own hinterland. When it comes to going to the enemy's hinterland alone to make a riot, Qin Daoxian is not inexperienced. When he single-handedly killed the real demon in the great Yuan demon kingdom of the real demon realm, he provoked the Yuanying monks to chase and kill him. It's just that at that time his cultivation base and strength were too weak, and he only did it once and he never dared to send his real body there again. Although the forces he faces now are much stronger than the great Yuan demon nation, his own strength is many times stronger than that at that time. Qin Daoxian has only two purposes for this trip. First, create chaos. Second, enhance strength. If you want to achieve these two goals, hunting down the single nascent soul true monarch is the best choice. Of course, the Yuanying cultivator is not a Chinese cabbage. Although Qin Daoxian's strength is strong, he does not know the strength and trump card of the Yuanying Jinjuan he is facing. If you rashly attack an unfamiliar Yuanying Jinjuan, it is very likely that the boat will capsize in the gutter. Therefore, he must investigate the information of this true monarch nascent soul as much as possible before he starts. On the one hand, it is to inquire about the strength of this true monarch nascent soul, and on the other hand, it is to investigate whether the pockets of this true monarch nascent soul are bulging. Don't look at the strength of Ming Huang Jinjuan, but he is really not rich among the monks of the same level. The three most valuable things in the opponent's body are only a 5th-order high-grade magic weapon, 67 drops of the power of good fortune, and a pregnancy and baby pill. With this wealth, Qin Daoxian doubts whether he has been robbed before, which is completely inconsistent with the identity of the late Yuanying monk of Minghuang Jinjuan. The next days, Qin Daoxian began to move in the direction of the Qingwei Dao school, using the light of escape little by little. Along the way he met a lot of other monks, but most of them were chi-refining monks. After all, in the world of immortals, chi-refining monks were the most numerous. Those cultivators in the chi-refining stage saw his escape, and they all avoided it, for fear of making the seniors unhappy. As for the base-building cultivators with the same cultivation, none of them took the initiative to approach Qin Daoxian. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian nodded in satisfaction. It seems that controlling the cultivation base in the middle stage of foundation building is a correct decision, Qin Daoxian secretly said. Along the way, Qin Daoxian inquired many times, and finally selected the first target person. The first target he chose was a mid-Yuanying monk named Jin Yuan Jinjuan. The reason why Qin Daoxian chose him as his first target was that this true monarch Jin Yuan was not high in cultivation, only in the middle stage of nascent soul, and on the other hand he was rich enough. Jin Yuan Jinjuan is a logistics supervisor in charge of the frontline resources of the Shenqing Dao League, Jin Yuan Xianqing. Although this immortal city is large, it is responsible for all the resource supply of the 4 immortal cities on the front line of the Shenqing Dao League. And Jin Yuan Jinjuan, as the only ruler of Jin Yuan Xianqing, can imagine how much he has secretly earned over the years. Jin Yuan Jinjuan is a member of the Shenyang sect. Although the Shenqing Taoist alliance is like a family, it is still different from the Qingwei Taoist sect. After so many years, Jin Yuan Jinjuan has been secretly in the resources of the Qingwei Taoist sect. Extract oil and water. The target has been found, and the next step is how to approach the target. As a cultivator in the Yuanying period, Jin Yuan Jinjuan was not an easy task to get close to him, and this matter had to be planned. Qin Daoxian thought to himself. Jin Yuan Immortal City, as the immortal city where Yuanying Jinjuan sits, governs an area of more than 100,000 miles. Within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles, countless family cultivators and loose cultivators all rely on Jinjuan Jinyuan's breath. Coupled with the fact that Jinjuan Jinyuan is in charge of the allocation of frontline resources, the number of people who ask him to do things is like a crucian carp crossing the river. The Shen family was an inconspicuous foundation-building family within the jurisdiction of Jinyuan Xianqing. It is said that the Shen family is inconspicuous, but it is relatively high-level cultivator. In fact, the Shen family is very famous among the foundation-building family because the Shen family is good at alchemy, and it is the most famous alchemy family in the vicinity. This day, less than 100 miles away from the Shen family's residence, two escaping lights galloped away one after the other. Ahead, a middle-stage Jindan real person was furious. As the man ran, he said eagerly, "I don't know each other at all, so why do you have to push each other so hard? Humph! Hand over the pregnant baby pill and it'll spare your life." The black-robed cultivator behind him had a loud voice, and he didn't mean to hide it at all. The golden core cultivator in front was simply furious. "I don't know what your friend is talking about." Still stubborn. Qin Daoxian raised his brows, the escape light suddenly accelerated, and a flash of sword light quickly drowned the Jin Danjinren in front of him. "Do not." The golden core cultivator had a look of despair in his eyes and left with hatred. Until he died, he didn't know why he was being targeted by this unfamiliar monk of the same rank, and he didn't even know the reason for the pregnant and infant pill that the other party kept talking about. After killing this Real Jin Dan, Qin Daoxian directly grabbed the other's body, and after some investigation his face suddenly turned ashen. "Why not? Do you think that if you hide the pregnant and infant pill, this seat will not be able to find it?" Qin Daoxian used the spirit fire secret technique with a look of resentment and burned the corpse of the Jindan real person in front of him. Before leaving, he glanced coldly at a group of people dozens of miles away, then turned into a flash of light and disappeared in place. Dozens of miles away. The Shen clan leader brought a group of elders and juniors in the clan, and was almost frightened by Qin Daoxuan's glance before he left. A long time. The head of the Shen family came back to his senses, and he immediately instructed everyone in the family, "Quick, go and have a look." Yes. High-level cultivators' fighting method does not rule out that there will be leftovers that will be discarded by the opponent at will. There are not many people who have the same idea as the Shen family leader. The distance of dozens of miles can be reached in the blink of an eye with the escape of a cultivator in the foundation building stage. There are many others who have the same idea as the Shen family and all of them are foundation establishment cultivators. That is to say, the battle between the two Jindan real people broke out too fast, otherwise there will be a Zifu cultivator who will come to pick up the leak. When the cultivators met, they didn't say hello to each other. They all used their spiritual senses to carefully search for the path that the two Jindan real people flew through when they were fighting. Shen Gabai's divine sense swept across an object, and immediately became as clever as drinking ice water in a hot summer day. Storage ring? Shen Gabai's heart thumped. As a descendant of the Shen family, he knew very well that the storage ring, a high-level storage magic weapon, could only be equipped by cultivators above the Zifu period. So, Shen Guibai swallowed fiercely, and immediately put away the storage ring calmly. Shen Guibai thought that no one saw this action, but in fact, this action of his had already fallen into the eyes of the Shen clan chief, Shen Maoqing. After some searching, everyone naturally found nothing. The cultivators looked at each other, those who knew each other handed each other's hands, and those who didn't know each other disappeared in a flash. Jindan cultivator fights and one died. This matter will definitely cause a lot of waves in the vicinity of Jinyuan Xianqing. The Shen clan chief, Shen Maoqing, also returned to the clan with a group of people. The Shen clan land is located above a second-order spiritual vein. As a long-established alchemy family, the Shen family has more than one spiritual vein, but the spiritual vein of the clan is of the best quality. Usually, the clan chief and the more qualified clan members in the family cultivate here. Returning to the clan, Shen Maoqing immediately started the defensive formation. "Patriarch, are you?" One of the family elders did not know why. The other elders also looked at Shen Maoqing in surprise, as if waiting for an explanation from the other party. Shen Maoqing did not reply, but looked at Shen Guibai in the crowd. Seeing Shen Maoqing looking at him, Shen Guibai's face suddenly turned pale. "Clan? Patriarch." Shen Guibai lowered his head, not daring to look at Shen Maoqing. "Take it out." Shen Maoqing stretched out his hand. Hearing this, Shin Gibai's heart was beating like a drum, and his breath was like an ox. After a long time, I was very reluctant to take out a storage ring from my arms. Storage ring. Guibai, where did you get this thing? Could it just be? Suddenly, some clan elders guessed the origin of this thing. And Shin Guibai lowered his head and said nothing. Shin Maoqing waved his sleeves, took the storage ring from Shin Gibai's hand, and sighed, "Do you know how much disaster it will bring to the family if you hide this thing?" Clan? Patriarch, I was wrong. Shin Guibai lowered his head and said in despair. Get up. Shin Maoqing shook his head, then looked at the elders. Elders, although this thing has fallen into the hands of my Shin family, it is unpredictable. When everyone heard Shin Maoking's words, they all nodded seriously. They are not the treasures that Shin Guibai is so stunned, and the Jindan cultivators are fighting for their lives, how can they be involved? In particular, they faintly heard that the treasure that the other party was fighting for was a treasure like the pregnancy and infant pill, which made them feel hotter. At this time, a foundation-building elder stood up from the crowd and cupped his hands. Patriarch, the only solution for now is to dedicate this treasure to the Jin family. Good. What the fifth man said makes sense. This treasure is indeed out of our hands. Everyone agreed. Seeing this, Shin Maoqing nodded and said, That's all there is to it. Since the fifth elder suggested it, then it's up to you to do it, and you must contact the Jin family as soon as possible. Remember, it's better? Let me personally dedicate this treasure to the head of the Kim family. Hearing this, the fifth elder hesitated for a moment, but nodded and said, Yes, Patriarch. Go. Shin Maoqing waved his hand. Everyone handed in their hands and left, and before leaving they dragged the lost Shin Guibai to leave together. Seeing everyone walking away, Shin Maoqing immediately closed the cave formation. Walking into the depths of the cave, I saw a Shin family head who looked exactly like him, lying in a coma on the bed, surrounded by a small formation around the jade bed. From the outside, the jade bed was empty. In front of the jade bed, a black-robed cultivator is guarding here, the one who chased and killed Jindan cultivator before. The black-robed clone saw Qin Daoxian, turned into a black light, and got into Qin Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si, and entered Qin Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si with him, and there was a water-blue fairy sword. It is by virtue of this flying snow sword that the black-robe clone can be cultivated in the Zifu period and behead the Jindan real person in reverse. Otherwise, just relying on Qin Daoxuan's black-robe avatar is not necessarily an opponent of Jindan cultivator. Chapter 330, Jinyuan Xianqing. Shin Family Land. A ray of light swept across the sky and landed in the discussion hall in the Shin family grounds. Inside the hall, the elders of the Shin family and the patriarch Shin Maoqing were already waiting for him. Seeing the light fall, everyone including Shin Maoqing stood up and looked at the person who came. "5, how is it? Fifth brother, what did the Jin family say?" "Yes, fifth brother." In the main hall, everyone gathered around them and asked in a row. The fifth elder of the Shin family looked around at everyone, and finally his eyes fell on the patriarch Shin Maoqing, nodding and saying, "I asked for a relationship and saw an elder of the Jin family in Zifu. The family can go to present treasures to the ancestors of the Jin family at that time." "Great. 5, I knew you had a way." When everyone heard the words of the fifth elder, they immediately became overjoyed. Shin Maoqing also smiled and nodded. 5, you did a good job. Oh yes, this is the spiritual stone that the family handed me to do things, and there are still some left. Taking the storage bag handed over by the fifth elder, Shin Maoqing weighed it, then handed it back and said, "The fifth, you have accomplished this important event for the family, and you can keep the remaining spirit stones." "This?" The fifth elder glanced at everyone and found that everyone was looking at him with a smile on their faces, and immediately handed over to everyone, and happily accepted the storage bag. He also knew in his heart that if the Shin family could really climb up to the Jin family, they would soar to the sky in the future. In comparison, the amount of spirit stones sent out was nothing at all. You must know that the person standing behind the Jin family is Jinjuan Jinyuan, the nascent soul cultivator. Although Jinyuan Jinjuan belongs to the Shenyang sect, and he cannot open up a family of immortals, but the Jin family was founded by the descendants of Jinyuan Jinjuan. In the sphere of influence of Jinyuan Xianqing, which immortal family and loose cultivator dare not by the face of the Jin family? Even the family land of the Jin family is located in Jinyuan Xianqing, under the protection of Jinyuan Jinjuan, which shows how much Jinyuan Jinjuan attaches great importance to the Jin family. Once the Shin family relied on the Jin family, their status in the vicinity would at least rise several grades. Those big clans who looked down on the Shin family in the past may have to curry favor with the Shin family in the future. In addition to the improvement in status, what has a greater impact on the Shin family is interests. You must know that Jinjuan Jinyuan is the person who is in charge of the supply of resources for several immortal cities on the front line of the Shenqing Dao League, and he has a high authority. As the chief officer of the logistics and military supplies, even if Jinyuan Jinjuan leaked a little oil from his fingernails, it would be enough for the Shin family to support him. Moreover, with the protection of the Jin family, the Shin family does not have to worry about outsiders coveting them when they eat these oils. Compared with a one-time precious treasure like the pregnant baby pill, the benefits of being able to get it safely are the most practical for the Shin family. This point, the top of the Shin family is very clear. This is also the reason why Shin Maoqing proposed to give the pregnant and infant pill to the Jin family, but the clan elders did not object. A month later, Shin family land. Shin Maoqing coughed lightly when he saw that the Shin clansmen had finished arranging their appearance. When everyone heard the cough, they all turned their attention to Shin Maoqing. Seeing everyone's gazes towards him, Shin Maoqing said, "This trip to the Jin family land is a great opportunity for my Shin family. All elders must remember to restrain the family members of the family and not lose them in front of the Jin family." Courtesy. Yes, Patriarch. The crowd shook hands in unison. Seeing that everyone was full of energy, Shin Maoqing nodded and waved his hand. "Let's go." Next moment, one after another, the rays of light rose into the sky and flew in the direction of Jinyuan Xianqing. The Shin family was only a few thousand miles away from the Jinyuan Immortal City, and with the speed of a foundation-building cultivator, they could arrive in less than half a day. Everyone in the Shin family set off at the starry night and arrived at Jinyuan Xianqing before noon. As a supply base for the 4 immortal cities on the front line, although the Jinyuan Immortal City occupies a small area, its location is very important. More importantly, within a distance of less than 100,000 miles from Jinyuan Immortal City, there are 3 large immortal cities, and all of them have nascent Soul True Monarch in charge. With the speed of the Yuanying cultivators escaping light, it really won't take long to arrive at a distance of 100,000 miles. Therefore, Qin Daoxuan's assassination must be unexpected. It is best to kill with one blow, and not give Jinyuan Jinjuan a chance to escape and ask for help. As for the strong attack, Qin Daoxian had not thought about it. But Jinyuan Xianqing has a 6th-order defense formation. With Jinyuan Zhenjin's cultivation in the middle of Yuan Ying's middle stage, Qin Daoxuan's desire to break through the 6th-order defense formation hosted by the opponent is undoubtedly a dream. Once he can't attack for a long time, Jinyuan Jinjuan only needs to ask the Yuanying monks in other immortal cities for help, and Qin Daoxian will be made dumplings by the Yuanying monks of the Shenqing Dao League. At that time he was the one who fled. More importantly, Qin Daoxian will also reveal his whereabouts. The ghost knows whether the Yuanying Jinjuan of the Shenqing Dao League has any secret method to mark people. Once Qin Daoxian was located by them, his situation in the Shenqing Dao League area would be a little dangerous. No matter how powerful Qin Daoxuan's teleportation was, he couldn't stand the enemy knowing his position anytime and anywhere, and sent a large group of strong men to hunt him down. He came to the realm of the Shenqing Dao Alliance in order to destroy and attract the attention of the Qingwei Daoist faction, so as to create opportunities for the Jinhai Palace Hall Master, not to come here to die. In front of the gate of Jinyuan Xianqing, the Shin clan fell into hiding and honestly lined up outside the city gate. At the gate of the city, the defense formation of Jinyuan Xianqing has been opened, and the monks in the army are all wearing spirit armor, and they look like they are waiting. "Patriarch, this Jinyuan city seems to be a lot more strict," an elder said in Shin Maoking's ear. Hearing this, Shin Maoqing nodded and said, "It is indeed quite strict, but there is nothing we can do about it. Wan Xinghai's thieves attacked our country of Izumo. Now that the frontline war is in full swing, we must be stricter here." Alas, this Wan Xinghai is a savage cultivator. The elder sighed and stopped talking. After waiting for about half an hour, finally everyone in the Shin family arrived. "Who are you? What are you doing in the city?" At the city gate, a foundation-building cultivator in spirit armor looked up and down Shin Maoqing and asked. Shin Maoqing, the patriarch of the Shin clan in Liangshan, Shiyuan, is here to attend the birthday banquet of the ancestors of the Jin family. Shin Maoqing said, took out an invitation and handed it over. It was the invitation of the Jin family's ancestors' birthday banquet. Seeing this invitation, the base-building cultivator who stepped forward to interrogate him relaxed a bit. Returning the invitation, the base-building cultivator in spirit armor waved his hand and said, "Go in, remember not to cause trouble in the city." "Thank you." Shen Maoqing cupped his hands and immediately led the Shen family into Jinyuan Xianqing. Enter Jinyuan Xianqing. Everyone in the Shen family didn't care about wandering around, and rode on the cloud-treading beast car, galloping all the way towards the Jin family. Jinyuan Xianqing, as in Xianqing with nascent soul true monarch in charge, naturally also has an air-forbidding formation. People who are at the foundation stage of the Shen family's highest cultivation base will definitely not be able to fly in the sky. Although it can't control the sky, the speed of the beast car is not slow. It only took 1 hour for everyone to arrive at the Jin family land. At this time it was already noon. In the Jin family land, guests have come one after another to celebrate the birthday of the ancestor of the Jin family. The ancestor of the Jin family, as a 9th-level cultivator of Jindan, although his cultivation is superb, he is a man of great joy and likes to pay attention to ostentation. In order to do what they like, the birthday banquet held by the Jin family for the ancestor will take a full month. Before entering the Jin family land, Qin Daoxian even heard monks complaining on the road. This ancestor of the Jin family is really too much. There is no reason to hold a birthday banquet every year. He is very happy to hold a birthday banquet every year. These small families can't afford gifts. Oh, say a few words less. Suddenly the cloud-treading beast car shook slightly. Qin Daoxian lifted the curtain of the animal car, and a continuous group of palaces appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. "Patriarch, here we are." Shen Maoqing nodded, looked at the extravagant palace complex in front of him with his hands behind his back, and waved, "Notify the clan, get off." "Yes, Patriarch." The next step is to give gifts, sing and congratulate each family. After a set of procedures, all the talents entered the palace group where the Jin family received guests. It has to be said that the Jin family, as the largest family within dozens of miles of Jinyuan Xianqing, is much bigger than their Qin family in terms of ostentation. At least Qin Daoxian had never seen any cultivator in the clan who held a birthday banquet with such fanfare, let alone held it every year. Shaking his head, Qin Daoxian followed behind the army and entered the banquet hall. The Jin family arranged the guests of different cultivation in different palaces according to the cultivation level of the monks. What Qin Daoxian showed was the foundation building stage, naturally in the palace where the foundation building monks were. Only before entering the foundation building period palace, Qin Daoxian released his black robe clone while everyone was not paying attention. Compared with Qin Daoxuan's deity, the black-robed avatar has reached the purple palace period, and it shows an uneasy look on his face. The cultivator received by the Jin family hesitated for a moment when he saw this senior from the Z mansion, but he hurried forward to greet him. "Senior, this is the palace where the monks from the foundation establishment eat, and the palace where you eat is here." Saying that, the cultivator of the Jin family made a gesture of invitation. The black-robe clone still had a cold face and nodded. Seeing this, the Jin family cultivator who came to receive the reception was slightly relieved. Even though he had his back to the Jin family, he was still instinctively nervous when dealing with these high-level monks. Putting down the black-robe clone, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief, and the expression on his face immediately became relaxed. Seeing that the patriarch was in a good mood, the 5th elder on the side smiled and said, "The patriarch will come later when I go." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded and smiled, "Go." After about a stick of incense, the 5th elder led a Zifu monk from the Jin family over. Seeing the 5th elder of the Shen family crouching down in front of this cultivator of the Jin family's purple house, Qin Daoxian smiled even happier. "Are you the head of the Shen family?" Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and said calmly, "Senior, it is the junior." Seeing that Qin Daoxian still showed a neither humble nor arrogant appearance when he saw him, the cultivator of the purple house nodded. "I heard that your Shen family has a big gift for my Jin family, and you must meet my Jin family ancestor in person, but is there something about it?" "That's true." Qin Daoxian nodded. Hearing this, the Jin family's Zifu cultivator threatened, "If the so-called treasure you took out contaminates the ancestor's eyes, is your Shen family ready to accept the anger of my ancestor?" "Senior, rest assured, since the junior insists on personally dedicating this treasure to old ancestor Jin, he is naturally confident." Seeing Qin Daoxian so confident, the Zifu cultivator nodded and said no more. Of course, the reason why he agreed to introduce the head of the Shen family to meet with old ancestor Jin was because he heard that a real person Jindan had fallen near the Shen family ground not long ago. This incident caused quite a stir in the vicinity of Jinyuan Xianqing. After all, Jindan Daoist is the strongest existence within hundreds of thousands of miles apart from Jinyuan Jinjuan. The fall of a Jindan Daoist will definitely cause a lot of shocks. Moreover, the ancestor of the Jin family even went to the Shin family's neighborhood to investigate after the incident. Based on multiple rumors, the Jin family learned that the two Jindan real people at that time seemed to have a conflict over a pregnant and infant pill. In this way, it makes sense for the two Jindan cultivators to fight to the death. Not long after that, the Shin family suddenly sent someone to present a gift to the Jin family. The Zifu cultivator, who was in charge of receiving the fifth elder of the Shin family at that time, immediately thought of the pregnant and infant pill. Knowing that this matter is of great importance, the Zifu cultivator did not dare to neglect, and immediately reported the matter to the ancestor. The old ancestor thought about it again and decided to let the Shin family secretly present this treasure when he attended his birthday banquet a month later. The reason why he was so sneaky was that the ancestor of the Jin family was thinking about the strong cultivator who killed the Jindan cultivator. Such a ruthless man, if he knew that his pregnant and infant pill was cut off by the ancestor of the Jin family, God would know what crazy actions the other party could make. The ancestor of the Jin family has been in the world of immortality for so long, and of course he doesn't think that he is arrogant because he is backed by the grandfather Jin Yuanzheng. Outsiders have rumored that the ancestor of the Jin family is very happy. In fact, the ancestor of the Jin family is not only extremely talented but also very cautious. This is because he knew that the Shin family had the pregnant and infant pill in his hand, but he couldn't help but get it back immediately, so he knew a thing or two. Qin Daoxian followed behind the Zifu cultivator, walking around for more than an hour, before finally meeting the rumored ancestor of the Jin family in a palace. The ancestor of the Jin family looked very young, as if he was different from Qin Daoxian, and his cultivation level had reached the 9th level of Jindan, which was much higher than Qin Daoxuan's cultivation in the early stage of Jindan. Junior Shin Maoqing, see Old Ancestor Jin. Seeing the ancestor of the Jin family, Qin Daoxian hurriedly bowed. The ancestor of the Jin family nodded, and immediately waved at the Zifu cultivator beside Qin Daoxian. You go out first. Yes, old man. Watching the family's Zifu cultivator leave, the ancestor of the Jin family looked at Qin Daoxian and sighed. The courage of fellow Taoists is really admired by me. He paused. That's right, it's not surprising that you dare to do this with your fellow Taoist strength. Am right, Qin Daoxian? Fellow Taoist Qin? Hear this. Qin Daoxian was shocked in his heart, but his face showed a look of daze and murmured, I don't know what the senior said. Chapter 331. When the ancestor of the Jin family heard Qin Daoxuan's question, he didn't mean to explain. There was just a smile on the corner of his mouth, and he looked at Qin Daoxian calmly. An atmosphere of silence was brewing in the hall. The nervous expression on Qin Daoxuan's face gradually subsided. He looked at the ancestor of the Jin family coldly and said, How do you see that I am not the head of the Shin family? Hearing this doubt, the ancestor of the Jin family suddenly laughed even more. Originally, I wasn't sure. The Jindan cultivator battle broke out near the Shin family and one was killed. Although this incident is abrupt, it is not uncommon to compete for treasures in the cultivation world. He paused. The only thing that makes me suspect is that you just met me. I see you? Qin Daoxian frowned. Yes, you see me. The ancestor of the Jin family looked at Qin Daoxian. Although you pretended to be nervous just now, I didn't see fear in your eyes. How could a foundation-building cultivator not have fear in his eyes when he first saw Jindan Jinren? Qin Daoxian was silent, and after a while he said helplessly, Is this why you doubt my identity? The ancestor of the Jin family nodded. It's always right to have a bold suspicion, but your next performance makes me truly sure that you are not Shin Maoqing. Oh. Qin Daoxian looked at him with interest. I clearly showed so much doubt about your identity. If it were the real Shin Maoqing, she would have been lying on the ground at this moment to explain and beg for mercy, instead of refuting me. You are so confident in front of me that you don't look like a foundation-building cultivator at all. The ancestor of the Jin family smiled lightly. Seeing the appearance of the other party, Qin Daoxian simply sat down in front of him, and for the first time seriously looked at the ancestor of the Jin family in front of him. The ancestor of the Jin family had a handsome face, wearing a lavender robe embroidered with gold edging, sitting cross-legged on a futon made of spiritual jade, holding a wisdom pearl. Qin Daoxian was looking at each other, and Jin Chaining was also looking at Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian's identity was broken, so he simply did not continue to disguise, but revealed his original face. Feeling the abundant vitality in Qin Daoxian, Jin Chaining sighed. Do you know? Your name, Qin Daoxian, has long been spread throughout the Shenqing Taoist League. I really did not expect that you would dare to set foot in the hinterland of the Shenqing Dao League if you were not hiding behind the Qianyuan sword sect at this moment. Don't you know that once your deeds are exposed, how many Yuaning cultivators will be sent by the Shenqing Dao League to hunt you down? Since I dare to come, naturally I will not be afraid of the pursuit of Shenqing Dao League. Qin Daoxian paused. It's you, aren't you afraid that I will kill you? Or do you think you can deal with me with your strength and wait until your grandfather comes to help? My grandfather? Jin Chaining shook his head with a mocking look on his face. Yes, he will indeed save me, but not to save me but to save himself. It seemed that Jin Chaining's tone was quite resentful, and Qin Daoxian looked at him. Do you have a grudge against your grandfather? I can't talk about hatred. I have practiced for more than 300 years, and the cultivation resources I enjoyed during this period, even if the direct disciples of Shenyang sect saw it, they would be jealous. And these cultivation resources are all provided by my grandfather, but what he did was not for me but for himself. Said Jin Chaining peeled off his Taoist robe, revealing his chest. I saw a complex blood-colored pattern that was round as a hole, deeply imprinted on Jin Chaining's chest. The blood slave contract. Qin Daoxian looked at Jin Chaining's chest and was shocked. The so-called blood slave contract is a very evil slave contract. The object of this slave contract is not outsiders, but one's own lineage. Seeing the blood slave contract on Jin Chaining's chest, Qin Daoxian instantly knew the cause and effect. In the cultivation world, after the cultivator reaches the nascent soul stage, he gradually has the possibility to seize the house. It's just that, although the cultivator can theoretically be revived for another life by taking another person, it will make the cultivator's soul and the body of the robbed person mutually exclusive. In order to solve this problem, some cultivators have developed a method to make their direct descendants the object of their own looting. This method requires that the deceased be cultivated by monks using secret methods from infancy, so that their bodies are more and more in line with the spirits of monks. Until the cultivator Shoyuan is approaching, he will seize this carefully cultivated body and let him live again. Qin Daoxian, as a cultivator of the Jindan stage, has naturally heard of this famous evil secret technique. But it was the first time I saw it with my own eyes. As a family cultivator, Qin Daoxian abhorred the practice of tarnishing family affection and blood. Treat your bloodline as a seed, fertilize and cultivate it, and when the right time comes, pick the fruit of this seed, and the blood slave contract is the means to control this bloodline seed. However, the deed of blood slaves can control the life and death of slaves, but it cannot control the thoughts of slaves. At this point, the blood slave contract is still inferior to the soul seal of the Imperial Beast sect. Sure enough, when Qin Daoxian saw the blood pattern on Jin Chaining's chest, he immediately understood that this Jin Chaining wanted Jin Yuanjin to die more than he did. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but lower his guard a bit. You want to kill your grandfather? Of course. Jin Chaining blushed. Every day I dream about killing this old man with my own hands. It's just that it is too difficult to break through the nascent soul stage. After my cultivation level was promoted to the 9th level of Jindan, the old thief Jin Yuan cut off my supply of resources. Without the pregnant baby pill and the indestructible true meaning, I broke through the nascent soul stage. Chances are very slim. In order to prevent me from escaping, he even ordered me not to step outside the range of his divine sense. In the eyes of outsiders, I, Jin Chening, look like a real person in the Jindan period, but I am greedy for life and fear of death, so I dare not set foot outside the 10,000 li radius of Jinyuan Xianqing, ha. At the end, Jin Chening laughed wildly. Looking at the somewhat neurotic Jindan real person in front of him, Qin Daoxian was speechless for a long time. Also an elder, the 13th uncle that Qin Daoxian met was a respectable elder who would rather sacrifice himself and earn a glimmer of hope for the younger generation of the family. However, Jin Chaining's so-called grandfather regards him as a tool that he can use for his own home. At this moment, Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling some sympathy for the person in front of him. In addition to Jin Chaining himself, the outside world may think that he, as the grandson of Jin Yuan Jinjuan, has cast a good child. Since you also want to kill your grandfather, we can work together. Qin Daoxian suggested. When Jin Chaining heard the words, his laughter stopped. He looked at Qin Daoxian, shook his head and said, No chance. Do you know how many Yuanying true monarchs are in Jinyuan Xianqing now? Why, isn't Jinyuan Xianqing only a Yuanying cultivator, Jinyuan Jinjuan? 1. Jin Chanying shook his head with a smile, stretched out 4 fingers and said, in today's Jinyuan Xianqing, there are 4 nascent soul true monarchs. Besides my grandfather, there is a late nascent soul monk and 2 middle nascent soul monks. What? Chen Daoxian was shocked. Hearing this news, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. If the plan was carried out smoothly, he would be attacked by the 3 nascent soul true monarchs at the same time when he attacked Jinyuan true monarch. This is too dangerous for Chen Daoxian. 1 late nascent soul, 3 middle nascent souls, a total of 4 Yuanying monks. Moreover, Chen Daoxian still did not know the specific strength of these 4 late nascent soul monks. Even if the strongest among them is similar in strength to true monarch Ming Huang, Chen Daoxian would be hard-pressed to win over him. Although Chen Daoxian promoted the water movement sword intent to the law realm, reaching the initial stage of the water movement law, and he could also use the 2-yield sword formation to initially integrate the water movement law and the space law, so that the power of the law skyrocketed. But no matter how the power skyrockets, whether the fusion law can match the late nascent soul monks is a matter of 2 things. Chen Daoxian's most powerful means has always been the pure yang immortal artifact of the Xingqiang Kendo map. But the Star Kendo map has a disadvantage, that is, it cannot be used for a long time. When he was able to win the true monarch Ming Huang, the time and place were right and people were indispensable, and it was only a narrow victory. Without the treasure of the Star's Kendo map, Chen Daoxian is not an opponent of true monarch Ming Huang. Even if he can use the sword array of Liangyi now, Chen Daoxian is not very sure. After all, how can he know what the power of the law after fusion is, and he has never fought in actual combat. But now the opportunity for actual combat has come, but the difficulty is too great, and the 4 nascent soul true monarchs came all at once, which made Chen Daoxian feel a little caught off guard. See Chen Daoxian frowning. Jin Chanying said, the best I can do is to help you deceive my grandfather, but you have to deal with him within 3 breaths. 3 breaths. Chen Daoxian shook his head. With the strength of the nascent soul cultivator, I only have a chance at most with 1 sword, and the other 3 nascent soul cultivators will be able to arrive in an instant. Hearing this, Jin Chanying frowned. After a long time he sighed, if it doesn't work you can go out of the city. I haven't seen you today and you haven't seen me either. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian did not speak. At this moment he faintly retreated in his heart, the 4 nascent soul true monarchs, this is a bit too difficult. The fact that so many Yuanying monks rushed to the front also proved from the side that the strategy of Chenyuan Jianzong had worked. Only in this way the difficulty of Chen Daoxian's destruction has suddenly soared by more than 1 grade. Originally a monk in the middle of nascent soul, Chen Daoxian did not say that he was able to capture him, but he was quite confident. But now, with the arrival of the 4 Yuanying true monarchs, Chen Daoxian had to think about running away. Even if he can use the Star's Kendo map to fight against the 4 nascent soul monks for a short time, it will not last for a long time. After a long time, defeat will be a matter of time. Moreover, Chen Daoxian didn't know what means these 4 true monarchs of nascent soul had. If the other party had a means of restricting his escape, maybe he would really be planted here. Half an hour. Chen Daoxian looked up at Jin Chanying and asked, do you know where your grandfather's treasure is? Ah. Hearing this, Jin Chanying couldn't help being stunned. He has seen people who want money but not life, but he has never seen such a person who wants money and not life. Seeing that Jin Chanying didn't speak, Chen Daoxian hurriedly said, fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand, I mean, do you know where your grandfather's power of creation is stored? Is there a difference between the 2? Jin Chanying looked at Chen Daoxian quite speechless. But after thinking about it, he nodded and said, although I don't know the exact location of my grandfather's treasure room, I can probably guess where it is. Where? Chen Daoxian's eyes lit up. Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion, my grandfather's dojo. Jin Chanying sneered, the old thief Jin Yuan is greedy and suspicious by nature, and he doesn't trust anyone at all. His treasures will not be placed anywhere except in the dojo where he sits. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian frowned, do you know the positions of the other 3 nascent soul monks? I don't know. Jin Chanying shook his head, however they are definitely not in my grandfather's Qian palace. Why are you so sure? Because my grandfather was a member of the Xianyang sect, and the 3 true monarchs who came to secretly support him belonged to the Qingwei Taoist sect. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian's heart moved. This news is really important. What Qin Daoxian was most worried about was the confluence of the four nascent soul cultivators. Now that the four nascent soul monks are divided into two divisions, Qin Daoxian will solve them next, and the difficulty will undoubtedly be reduced a lot. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian spit out, and a water-blue fairy sword flew out, which was Qin Daoxuan's flying snow sword. The law manifests. Jin Chaining was startled when he saw Qin Daoxuan's methods. Everyone knows that Qin Daoxian can kill true monarch Ming Huang, and the realm of the avenue must have reached the realm of law. Everyone knows this, but it is unheard of for Qin Daoxian to manifest the law into the appearance of a fairy sword. But Jin Chaining's perception can't be wrong. Although the flying snow sword in front of him has the appearance of a fairy sword, it is a law of water movement. Jin Chaining was shocked when he saw this scene. Qin Daoxuan's hand is not much better than the effect of the avenue stone tablet. If Qin Daoxian placed this sword in the clan all the time, it would be as if there was a stone tablet on the avenue, which would provide the clansmen with enlightenment at all times. Jin Chaining is also the ancestor of the Jin family. Although he hates Jin Yuanjin extremely, he is no different from the ancestors of other families. This is also the mentality that a normal family ancestor should have towards a family monk. A mentality like Xinjuan Jin Yuan, who sees his descendants as tools of cattle and horses, is an abnormal, perverted mentality. Without saying a word, Qin Daoxian stabbed the flying snow sword directly into Jin Chaining's Dantian Qi. Seeing the flying sword entering the body, Jin Chaining's expression did not change at all. Although Qin Daoxian agreed to cooperate with him, he still needs at least some insurance. Both parties are very clear about this. Hanging the flying snow sword in Jin Chaining's body, Qin Daoxian nodded and said, let's go to Qian Immortal Mansion together. Okay. Jin Chaining felt the terrifying law of water movement in the Dantian Qi and nodded. The immortal sword transformed by this law of water movement is more threatening than the blood slave contract on his chest. If he deceives Qin Daoxian only needs to think about it, and his Fei Shui sword can instantly twist Jin Chaining's golden core into pieces. 7017K. Chapter 332. The two escaped lights landed in the Qian Immortal Mansion at the same time. As the true monarch dojo, the Qian Immortal Mansion covers a much larger area than the Jin family. Although the Qian Immortal Mansion is called Immortal Mansion, in fact, this dojo occupies nearly 1/10 of the entire Jinyuan Immortal City. It's really lavish. Qin Daoxian stood in front of the Immortal Mansion and mocked. Jin Chaining on the side also sneered. This old thief enjoys the most, not only for greed for money but also for women. It's just that in recent years his lifespan is approaching, and he often retreats in Immortal Mansion to cultivate, but he rarely tossed outside. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded. True monarch Jin Yuan is lustful, and this is no secret within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles in Jinyuan Immortal City. In the past, immortal clans often offered beautiful maids to Xinjuan Jin Yuan. It's just that in recent years Jin Yuan Xinjuan has not come forward to accept beautiful maids, and Qin Daoxian has not moved his mind in this regard. Talking room. The two quickly entered the Qian Immortal Mansion. Sure enough, along the way Qin Daoxian met in this Immortal Mansion. All of them were young women. Although these women were not high in cultivation, they all had one thing in common: beautiful appearance. Seeing these beautiful maids, Qin Daoxian couldn't help sighing that the rumors were true. Your Highness. Your Highness. Along the way the maids in the Immortal Mansion met Jin Chaining, and they all bowed and saluted, showing respect. Seemingly seeing Qin Daoxuan's doubts, Jin Chaining explained, for this old thief, as long as I don't run away or die, he can accommodate me in any matter. In the eyes of outsiders, I am the heir of this Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion and even this Golden Origin Immortal City, but in fact, he. Jin Chaining sneered again and again. The two walked in the Immortal Mansion for about half an hour before finally reaching the core area of the Immortal Mansion. At this time, a slender and charming purple-clothed female cultivator walked towards Qin Daoxian with an elegant gait. Behind the purple-clothed woman, there were also a group of beautiful maids. This is one of the old thief's favorite concubines. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded clearly. The beautiful purple-clothed female cultivator first glanced at Qin Daoxian, then turned to Jin Chaining, frowning, and said, Your Highness Jin, the true monarch never likes you to bring outsiders here. Who is this? Does it have anything to do with you? Jin Chaining said coldly, Have you forgotten your identity? Even a concubine and mere concubine dares to question this seat? Feeling the terrifying power on Jin Chaniying's body, the glamorous purple-clothed female cultivator suddenly lost her aura, her mouth was flat and she said aggrieved, "His Royal Highness, the slave family dare not." As he said that, he looked at Jin Chaniyin with his big watery eyes. Standing aside to see this scene, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but make up for dozens of minutes of restricted-level plot. It seems that what Jin Chaniyin said is true, that Jin Yuanjin is more indulgent towards him. Seeing that the glamorous purple-clothed women's clothes were soft, Jin Chaniyin gave up and said coldly, "Ziling, let me ask you, the ancestor is still in retreat." Hearing this, the glamorous female cultivator named Ziling nodded. "In the past few years the ancestor has been retreating." "Okay, I understand, you can step back." "Yes." Ziling looked at Qin Daoxian again, bowed to the two of them and left sideways. Watching Ziling and the others leave, Jin Qinyuan continued, "This is the beautiful maid given to the ancestor by a Jindan family in the Jinyuan Xianqing sphere of influence. Even though this woman is not a high-level cultivator, her methods are not weak. In less than 10 years, the old thief handed over this immortal mansion to her to take care of." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian shook his head. "For my monks, their own strength is everything." "That's right." Jin Chaniyin nodded in agreement. If it weren't for his lack of strength, he would have turned against Jin Yuan Jinjuan long ago, and he would have known that he was the target of Jin Yuan Zhenjin's body, and he would pretend to call the other party's ancestor all day long. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but glanced at Qin Daoxian enviously. If he had the strength of the one in front of him, how could Jinjuan Jin Yuan take away his body? The other side. Although Xiling left Qin Daoxian and the others, her divine sense had been keeping an eye on Qin Daoxian and the others in secret. It stands to reason that with her mere 9th-floor cultivation base in Zifu, she secretly observes Qin Daoxian and Jin Chaniyin, the two Jin Dan Real people, and she will definitely be discovered. But Xiling practiced a secret technique of divine consciousness. Although this divine sense secret technique cannot perform divine awareness attacks, it can make divine awareness investigation extremely secretive. Qin Daoxian frowned and his footsteps paused slightly. Seeing Qin Daoxian stop suddenly, Jin Chaniyin felt tight and quickly said, "What's wrong?" "Fine." Qin Daoxian shook his head. Despite his doubts, Qin Daoxian was reluctant to explain, and Jin Chaniyin, who was in a weak position, couldn't ask more. The two turned around and finally stopped in front of a palace. This should be the treasure room of the old thief. Jin Chaniyin pointed to the palace road in front of him. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian frowned. "Have you ever been in here?" "No," Jin Chaniyin shook his head. "However, according to what I confided in the Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion, every time the old thief came here, he acted very mysteriously, and there is a great possibility that this is his treasure room." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian seriously looked at the palace in front of him. This palace occupies a small area, but it is shrouded in a fifth-order formation, and this fifth-order formation is still open. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian had a headache, turned to look at Jin Chaniyin and said, "Do you have a way to enter the palace?" The unhosted fifth-order formation could not stop Qin Daoxian. But the problem is, once he forcibly breaks the formation, it will inevitably cause a huge movement. At that time, Jin Yuan Jinjuan, who has been disturbed, will definitely come here directly. Qin Daoxian's idea of using Jin Yuan Zhenjin's treasure to improve his strength will also fail. Jin Chaniyin shook his head. "No." Hearing this answer, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel a little worried. Jin Chaniyin didn't speak anymore. He had already brought him to Jinjuan Jinyuan's treasure room according to Qin Daoxian's suggestion. As for whether he could open this treasure room, he couldn't guarantee it. Seeing that Qin Daoxian did not speak, Jin Chaniyin was also a little discouraged. Using the hand in front of him to get rid of Jinyuan Jinjuan is the best way for him to get out of Jinyuan's engine's control, but it seems that it is difficult for Qin Daoxian to compete with the four nascent soul Jinjuan at the same time. Qin Daoxian didn't say a word, turned around this palace for a few times, and finally determined that the formation outside the palace in front of him was a fifth-order low-grade defense formation. To be able to set up a fifth-order defense formation in such a small area is no less difficult than the sixth-order defense formation that covers the entire Jinyuan Xianqing. Qin Daoxian's formation realm is a big realm higher than his refining level, reaching the fourth-order high grade, which is not too far from the fifth-order formation master. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian simply sat in the air, his eyes staring at the formation in front of him. This? When Jin Chaniyin saw Qin Daoxian sitting here cracking the formation, he couldn't help but shouted that he was too reckless. What is the difference between this and the Arabian Nights? Seeing that Jin Chaining was in a hurry like an ant on a hot pot, Qin Daoxian said in a voice transmission, "Fellow Taoist, instead of being anxious, why don't you help me get rid of the servants of Qian Immortal Mansion, and don't let outsiders disturb me?" Hearing this, Jin Chaining struggled for a while. After a long time he took a deep breath and nodded, "Okay. Since fellow Taoists are confident, he'll put all my bets on fellow Taoists." Qin Daoxian glanced at him, then turned his head and stopped talking. Jin Chaining is also a decisive person. After making a decision, he immediately left here to support Qin Daoxuan's servants of Qian Immortal Mansion. As for Jinjuan Jinyuan who is in retreat, it is not something he can control. After Jin Chaining left, within a radius of several miles, only Qin Daoxian sat cross-legged. It seems that he is sitting here stupidly, but in fact, Qin Daoxuan's comprehension stars in the sea of knowledge are spinning wildly at the moment. His comprehension is also soaring wildly at this moment. 10 times understanding, 30 times understanding, 50 times understanding, 100 times understanding. After comprehension broke through 100 times, the consumption of comprehension stars suddenly rose a step. Compared with the improvement of comprehension within 100 times, the comprehension is more than 100 times, and each time the comprehension is doubled, the consumption of comprehension stardust doubles. With such a superposition, no matter how big Qin Daoxuan's comprehension stars are, he can't stand this consumption speed. 108 times enough. Qin Daoxian was deeply distressed when he saw that in the space of the sea of knowledge, the comprehension stars became smaller at a speed visible to the naked eye. If you invest so much, if the treasure of Jinjuan can't be filled, it will be a big loss. The thought in his heart was fleeting, and Qin Daoxian concentrated on comprehending the fifth-order low-grade defense formation in front of him. In the eyes of ordinary monks, the fifth-order formation is arranged with the help of the power of heaven and earth. After the formation eyes and formation patterns are all integrated into the world, and there is no flaw at all. But in the eyes of the same-order array masters, the fifth-order array method is not without flaws. Even though Qin Daoxuan's formation realm has only reached the 4th level, with the blessing of 108 times his understanding, he can see the flaws of this formation. In Qin Daoxuan's eyes, the light of spirituality kept flickering. In the end, his eyes fell on the plaque of the palace. A smile appeared on Qin Daoxuan's face. The flaw in the formation is actually here. Qin Daoxian stood up and stretched out his palm. In the palm of his hand, a mysterious array of lines condensed, and finally Qin Daoxian waved at the plaque of the palace. This fifth-order low-grade defense formation slowly dissipated, without causing any movement. See the formation dissipate. A flash of surprise flashed in Qin Daoxuan's eyes, and he immediately raised his legs and walked towards the palace. After entering the palace, Qin Daoxian was stunned by the sight in front of him. Compared with the storage ring of true monarch Ming Huang, the treasures in the palace in front of him are a dazzling array. In comparison, the Ming Huang Jinjuan in the late Yuaning period was really poor. Of course, it is more likely that all the wealth of true monarch Ming Huang is not just in a storage ring. Stepping into the palace, the first thing that catches your eye is a piece of high-level magic weapon. At the point of entry, one by one is held up in the air by the floating formation, and the magical instruments overflowing with spiritual light are dazzling people's eyes. At first glance, none of these instruments was lower than the 4th rank. Moreover, the types of instruments in front of them are complete, including offensive, defensive, auxiliary and so on. And each type of magic weapon has different styles. For example, among the offensive instruments, there are single-handled flying swords, complete sets of female and female flying swords, sun and moon rings and seals, etc. As Qin Daoxuan's pace deepened, he found that the rank of the instruments was getting higher and higher. In the end, there were actually 13 fifth-order instruments presented in front of him. Most of the 13 fifth-order artifacts were low-rank 5th rank and middle-rank 5th rank artifacts, and there were only 3 high-rank 5th rank artifacts. Among them, there are 2 fifth-order high-grade instruments that are in the style of flying swords. These 2 flying swords, one is a fire attribute flying sword, and the other is a metal flying sword. When Qin Daoxian saw these 2 flying swords, he immediately grabbed them overjoyedly. Under the absorption of his mana, the 2 masterless flying swords flew to his palm without hindrance, turning into 2 small swords about 3 inches long, hovering in his palm. Good baby. Qin Daoxian was very excited when he saw 2 high-grade 5th rank flying swords. So far, these 2 flying swords are the highest grade flying swords he has obtained. Even Fei Xue and Qingying Shuangjin who have followed him all the way up to now are only low-rank 5th rank and middle-ranking 5th rank. As for the Xin Huang Jinqian Pagoda, although it is a 5th-order high-grade magic weapon, it is a Taoist magic weapon. It is an auxiliary magic weapon, not an offensive magic weapon, nor a flying sword. For Qin Daoxian, a sword cultivator, his obsession with flying swords is obviously far more than other types of instruments. After playing with the flying sword for a while, Qin Daoxian reluctantly put it into the storage ring, and put the other 11 5th-order instruments and hundreds of 4th-order instruments into the storage ring. Until this moment, Qin Daoxian really felt how rich the Jinyuan Jinjuan who had been in Jinyuan Xianqing for more than 2,000 years. 11 5th-order instruments, ordinary nascent soul cultivators, with 3 or 5 5th-order instruments in their entire net worth, would be considered pretty good. Because the 5th-order magic weapon is different from the low-level magic weapon, this thing is not something you can buy if you have a spirit stone. Usually, it is necessary for the cultivator of Yuanying to use the power of good fortune to refine and promote, in order to promote the 4th-order magic weapon to the 5th order. And how precious the power of creation is, even a Yuanying cultivator has to spend a lot of time to extract it from the spirit stone. In this way the 5th-order magical tools are naturally very rare. That's it, Jinyuan Jinjuan has still collected 13 5th-order instruments for more than 2,000 years. Moreover, this is not all his net worth. Because any cultivator must keep the best and most suitable instruments for his own use, and only those instruments that cannot be used or have different attributes will be collected. This also means that there are more than 13 5th-order instruments in the hands of Jin Yuanxian. This old guy, there are so many 5th-order magic tools? Qin Daoxian was speechless. How much has he greed for these years? Shaking his head, Qin Daoxian no longer thought about it. No matter how much the other party embezzled, at this moment all these things belonged to him. After inventorying the instruments, Qin Daoxian didn't bother to look at other treasures, and instead looked for the power of good fortune. He has not forgotten the purpose of his trip. Only by finding a large amount of the power of creation, can he raise both his water law and space law to the high level of the law realm. At that time he will have the confidence to face the 4 nascent soul true monarchs. Taking 10,000 steps back, even with the power of the 2-yield sword formation and the combination of the water movement law and the space law of the high level of the law, it is still no match for the 4 nascent soul true monarchs. But running under their siege was no problem. Chapter 333? No. Qin Daoxian searched for a long time in the palace where Jinjuan Jinyuan was hiding treasures, but he didn't find a trace of the power of creation. Why not? Qin Daoxian couldn't believe it. Not only is there no power of creation, but the inextinguishable true meaning of helping nascent soul cultivators to improve their body refinement, there is no trace in this treasure palace. There are magic tools, spirit armor and various 4th-order spiritual pills and medicines, but there is no power of creation and indestructible true meaning. Qin Daoxian frowned. No, there are no treasures to help Jindan stage cultivators break through to nascent soul stage. After searching for a long time, Qin Daoxian found a problem. Not only are there no treasures to enhance the cultivation and strength of the nascent soul cultivators, but there are also no spiritual pills that assist the Jindan cultivators to break through. Even there is no elixir to improve the cultivation of Jindan stage cultivators. It seems Jinyuan Jinjuan did not collect such treasures to enhance the cultivation of Jindan cultivators, as well as the strength and cultivation of nascent soul cultivators. But how is this possible? Qin Daoxian frowned. Could it be that? He raised his head. Jinyuan Jinjuan knew for a long time that Jin Chaining knew about this treasure room, and this palace was deliberately displayed by Jinyuan Jinjuan. Qin Daoxian could imagine that if Jin Chaining really abolished the power of 9 bulls and 2 tigers and opened the defense formation of the palace, only to find that there was no treasure he wanted in the palace. That sense of loss is expected to drive Jin Chaining crazy and turn him into a walking corpse with no thought and no will to resist. I'm afraid, this is what Jinjuan Jinyuan wants. Qin Daoxian thought to himself. However, Qin Daoxian doesn't care if there is a pregnancy and baby pill, but without the power of good fortune, Qin Daoxian's thoughts of breaking through in the battle are all in vain. Is it really necessary to retreat strategically? Just when Qin Daoxian hesitated, he suddenly raised his head and glanced at the gate of the palace. Come out. Qin Daoxian said indifferently. Long before entering the palace, Qin Daoxian vaguely felt that there was an obscure consciousness peeping at him. But Qin Daoxian can be sure that the other party is not a Yuanian cultivator because the sense of threat to him by this spiritual sense is completely zero, and it cannot be the spiritual consciousness of the Yuanian cultivator at all. The voice just fell. At the gate of the palace, a purple figure slowly appeared. It's you. Qin Daoxian's eyes narrowed slightly. What a thief who dares to steal the treasure of the true monarch. Aren't you afraid that I will tell the true monarch and smash you to ashes? Ziling put on a condescending posture, her charming eyes staring coldly at Qin Daoxian. Hearing this threat, Qin Daoxian laughed instead of anger. Fairy, don't be joking, you dare to fornicate with Jin Yuanzhenjin's own grandson, and you dare to tell me about stealing his treasure? Hearing Qin Daoxian say that she was having an affair with Jin Chaining, Ziling's delicate face immediately blushed, and her delicate body trembled slightly with anger. Good thief you. She stretched out her green jade fingers, pointed at Qin Daoxian, and was speechless for a while. Since the fairy is here, instead of going to Jin Yuanzhenjin to inform, I want to come to our position, and you also want to get rid of Jin Yuanzhenjin's control, am I right? Qin Daoxian looked at the other party with certainty. You are talking nonsense. Ziling waved her sleeves abruptly. I am the concubine most favored by the true monarch. How can I agree with you, a thief? Why do you have to deceive yourself, fairy? If you don't agree with me, how can you have an affair with that Jin Chaining? If you don't agree with me, how can you find out that an outsider has stolen the treasures of Jin Yuanzhenjin without notifying Jin Yuanzhenjin? Qin Daoxian asked one after another, causing Ziling to open her mouth, but she couldn't say anything to refute. Even if you agree with your position, how can you be a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan? How can you get Jin Yuanzhenjin? Ziling looked rather lonely. She raised her head and looked at Qin Daoxian. If you are interested, you should leave the treasure, and I think I didn't see anything. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian was unmoved, but instead said, looking at your appearance, it seems that you know very well about the treasure of Jin Yuanzhenjin? Ziling frowned and said strangely, you are a person who kindly persuaded you to let you go, but you were not grateful, but instead asked me if I knew about the treasure of the true monarch. Oh. You are not satisfied with stealing so many treasures, and you are willing to give up if you want to hollow out all the real monarch's old bottom? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian's eyes lit up. Sure enough, this female cultivator named Ziling really knew the real treasure of Jin Yuanzhenjin. I ask you, do you want to get rid of Jin Yuanzhenjin's control? Qin Daoxian stared at her fixedly. Ziling was a little impatient and stared. Even if I want to get rid of Jin Yuanzhenjin's control, what can you do if you are a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan? Do you think you are Qin Daoxian from Zhenan Xianqing? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian widened his eyes. The two stared wide-eyed in the palace, and for a while Qin Daoxian had a headache how to answer each other. Tell her that he is Qin Daoxian? Isn't this rubbing the opponent's IQ on the ground? Half an hour. Ziling sneered. Why don't you talk big now? Qin Daoxian was quite speechless and directly pointed his finger at her. Immediately, an invisible space fluctuation swept across Ziling's body, and then a layer of space barriers wrapped Ziling tightly. See this scene. Ziling frowned first, then touched the space barrier formed by the space cage, and looked at Qin Daoxian in confusion. What are you doing? Qin Daoxian. Nothing. Qin Daoxian suddenly felt that it was really difficult for him to explain his strength to this female cultivator named Ziling. Because even if she easily defeated the other party in her cognition, isn't it right and proper for the Jindan cultivator to defeat the Zifu cultivator? The crux of the question is, how can he convince Ziling that his strength is stronger than that of Jin Yuanzhenjin, and he can let her get rid of Jin Yuanzhenjin's control? Seeing that Qin Daoxian did not speak, Ziling looked at him strangely and asked, why don't you speak? The lie was pierced and you can't speak? Qin Daoxian. That's it, Ziling sighed. Since I can cooperate with Jin Chaining, I don't care if you have a collaborator in the early stage of Jindan. Speaking of this, Ziling turned serious. Jin Yuanzhenjin's life is coming. He wants to take Jin Chaining's body before the end of his life. And I, after Jin Yuanzhen successfully took the house, broke through the Yuan again. The key to infancy. Ding furnace? Qin Daoxian immediately understood the meaning of Ziling's words. You are the body of Jiuyin Xuanqi? Ziling nodded bitterly. In the world of immortals, it is very common to regard beautiful female cultivators as cauldrons. If you don't consider moral perception, the Ding furnace is even better than the elixir to a certain extent. Cultivators take spiritual pills to practice, and there are still erysipelas left in the body, so they cannot take them frequently. The cauldron is different. The monks use the cauldron to repair and cultivate, and they follow the yin-yang avenue. Not to mention that this process makes people feel relaxed and happy, and the sequelae of the key mining and repairing practice are extremely small. This is also the reason why the cauldron in the immortal world has been repeatedly banned. After all, the high-ranking female cultivator also hated the matter of the cauldron. Many famous fairies and Xianyuns who saw a male cultivator treat a female cultivator as a cauldron, and they usually drew their swords directly without saying a word. Even so, the wind of the cauldron is still prohibited. It stands to reason that the supreme ruler of Wanxinghai, the sect master of Qinyuan Jianzong, is a female cultivator. Shouldn't Wanxinghai be reduced to a cauldron without a female cultivator? In fact, in the hundreds of years when Wanxinghai attacked Izumo, countless captured female cultivators have become the cauldrons of Wanxinghai cultivators. The first time Qin Daoxian participated in the auction in Xianqing of Guang'an Mansion, he met the female cultivator prisoner of war who was auctioned. It can be said that beauty without strength is often a sin in the world of immortals, and it will be targeted by countless evil cultivators. The female nun named Ling in front of her is a typical example. If it is said that ordinary cauldrons are only of great help to monks' practice, then the female cultivator of the nine yin and mysterious body is the most effective of all cauldrons. No one using the body of Jiuyin profound concubine as a cauldron can not only quickly help the cultivator improve his cultivation, but more importantly, she can also help the male cultivator to break through the threshold of the Great Realm. For example, the Zifu period breaks through to the Jindan period, and the Jindan period breaks through to the Yuanying period. Even a female cultivator with the body of the nine-yin profound concubine is high enough to even break through from the nascent soul stage to the nascent soul stage. This kind of cauldron can be of great help. This beautiful female cultivator named Ling, when she heard Qin Daoxian revealing his identity as a mysterious body of nine yin, not only did not have the slightest pride, but a little bit of hatred. If it weren't for the mysterious body of Jiuyin, perhaps she would not have been targeted by Jinju and Jinyuan. Hearing that Xiling has the body of Jiuyin Shenzhong, Qin Daoxian knew what he had guessed before, that Jin Chaining had an improper relationship with the other party, so the possibility is unlikely. Because this female cultivator in front of him will be of great help to Jin Yuanjin to break through the nascent soul stage again after taking the house in the future. Jin Yuanjin will never allow Jin Chaining to touch Xiling. Qin Daoxian was sure that this man named Ling must have the means of restraint laid down by Jinju and Jin Yuan. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian finally understood why this female cultivator named Ling dared to come to this treasure room to find him directly. It turned out to be fearless. Not caring to sympathize with the other party, Qin Daoxian nodded. Since you promised to cooperate, then show the sincerity of cooperation? Hearing this, Ling gave Qin Daoxian a deep look. I have to say, the courage and appetite of fellow Taoists are the greatest I have ever seen. Thanks for the compliment. Seeing Qin Daoxian's cheeky appearance, Ling said angrily, this is where the treasure of true monarch Jin Yuan is located, but his treasure is divided into light and dark. The difference between light and dark? Qin Daoxian looked at her thoughtfully. Ling didn't give a shit, and walked straight to a decorated vase in the treasure room. She pinched the magic formula and pointed at the vase. Suddenly the vase spun up and down. After about hundreds of turns, a light curtain appeared in front of Qin Daoxian and Ling. Dongteng. Qin Daoxian secretly called Jin Yuan Jinjuan cunning. Yes, it's Dongtian. Ling nodded and took the lead in walking towards Dongtian. Without saying a word, Qin Daoxian followed her directly and walked into the cave. Stepping into the cave, a scene of birds chirping and flowers comes into view, giving people a sense of willows and flowers. The cave built by Jinju and Jinyuan is not very big, but what is installed here is the essence of his thousands of years of savings. Qin Daoxian found that what existed the most in this cave was not the power of creation, but the true meaning of immortality. Indestructible true meaning, the shape is a strange substance as dark as ink. This kind of material is very strange. When scattered, it is like smoke and it is misty. When gathered, it is like a diamond and it weighs more than 10,000 tons. Inside the cave, boxes filled with immortality filled the entire courtyard. Qin Daoxian glanced at it and found that there were actually 17 boxes. When the treasure box was opened, each treasure box was densely packed with inextinguishable true meaning aggregates shaped like black diamonds. Compared with the true meaning of immortality, Jinyuan Jinjuan has much less power of creation. Perhaps in Jinyuan Zhenjin's opinion, the power of good fortune is far less precious than the true meaning of immortality. After all, Although the power of good fortune can improve the rank of instruments, it cannot directly improve the cultivation of monks. After all, for monks, their own cultivation and the realm of the great Tao are the fundamentals. Magical instruments are precious, but in the final analysis they are only external forces. As long as the cultivation base can break through, do you still worry about finding a suitable magic weapon in the future? But for Qin Dao Xian, the preciousness of the power of creation is by no means under the true meaning of immortality. Even for now, it is far more than the true meaning of immortality. Because the indestructible true meaning is not available to him now, with his skull-shattering cultivation base, the indestructible true meaning is the most violent poison in the world. As long as it is integrated into the body, it will completely disintegrate his body. The treasure of immortal true meaning can only be used little by little if the cultivator's body refinement reaches the peak of the blood-dripping realm. Of course, if the cultivator's Tao realm is high enough, it is not impossible to use the immortal true meaning in advance under the protection of the Tao law, but the premise is that the intake of the immortal true meaning is strictly controlled. Just with Qin Daoxuan's body training, no matter how high the Tao realm is. With the strength of his physical body, it is estimated that after encountering the true meaning of immortality, the physical body will gasify directly, and it will be too late for rescue. Now he even opens the treasure chest containing the true meaning of immortality, and it is opened with the power of the law condensed by the law of space, and he does not dare to use mana casually. Qin Daoxian was afraid that this thing would infect his body along the mana. On the side, Ziling saw that Qin Daoxian was actually daring to open the treasure chest containing the true meaning of immortality, and she was suddenly shocked. Just wanted to scold but found Qin Daoxian standing there safe and sound. The words of scolding could not help but hold back. She stared at Qin Daoxian with her beautiful eyes and said, 17 treasure chests, 3 bottles of the power of creation. These are all the hidden treasures of Jinju and Jinyuan. In particular, these 17 treasure chests are enough for a cultivator in the early nascent soul who has just merged with the indestructible true meaning into his body, and cultivated into an indestructible true body. You actually know the real body of immortality? Qin Daoxian looked at Ziling playfully. Humph. Ziling snorted softly and turned her head. Seeing that Ziling was unhappy, Qin Daoxian immediately skipped this topic. I didn't expect that Jinju and Jinyuan would actually trust you so much. He thought that after taking Jin Chaining, I, a female cultivator of the Nining profound body, can cooperate with his double cultivation to obtain the best cultivation effect. Jin Yuan Zhenjin's ambition is very big, thinking of impacting the Yuan dynasty. God period. I can tell. Qin Daoxian couldn't help nodding when he saw the various preparations of this true monarch Jin Yuan. 7017K. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.